According to an ancient prophecy, they were to become fighters against all worldly evil. It, described in legends, held a trident in its hands and had terrifying horns. The beautiful maiden, with her hands folded in front of her, bravely defended the world from fallen people who had made a treacherous pact with the devil himself in order to gain strength and power. These terrible creatures, non-humans who betrayed their human nature and sold their souls, spread chaos and destruction around them. They stole human feelings, leaving people without emotions, turning them into empty shells. There was an ancient legend that was passed down from generation to generation, passing from one city to another. It was told to small children at night to warn them against dark forces and instill in them faith in goodness. The little girl was sobbing loudly, and her mother did not hold back her angry reproaches towards Claire. She angrily scolded the little girl for the fact that the maiden's actions had upset Eziel to tears. The girl with black hair standing in front of her mother firmly declared that she considered her friend stupid. These words caused even more irritation in her mother. A calm and very beautiful girl with bright, multicolored hair, black in the front and white in the back, quietly noticed that her friend dreamed of a completely different gift from the May Fairy. With her arms folded across her chest, the woman asked sternly, with a wary expression, what exactly was wrong with this request, not understanding why such words caused such a strong reaction in the little girl. The little lady said indifferently that she had known for a long time that it was their mother who gave them presents, and not the fairy, and therefore considered her friend rather silly for still believing in fairy tales. The little girl with blonde hair immediately rushed to one of her parents, holding tightly to the hem of her dress, as if seeking their support and protection from what was happening around her. She cried and, confusedly asking if spring witches really did not exist, looked for confirmation of her doubts, hoping for an answer that could restore faith in fairy tales and magic. Clutching her head, the woman asked in despair why she had been given twins who were like night and day, so different, with completely opposite characters and habits. Putting her hand on her daughter's head, she hastened to calm the poor thing, trying to console her with warm words and a gentle look to restore her confidence and calm. Claire turned to Eziel, saying that she was wrong and that her mother was unlikely to be that fairy, deciding to play along with the older lady in order to dispel some doubts and give the situation a light touch of humor. The little children's palms crossed and their fingers intertwined, creating an invisible connection and symbolizing a friendship that was so sincere and pure. Eziel approached her friend, sincerely saying that she was ready to make peace, and asked for forgiveness, hoping that this would help restore their friendship and return the previous atmosphere of trust between them. Claire couldn't help but notice how beautiful her neighbor's smile was. It shone like sunlight, filling everything around with warmth and kindness every time she smiled. Before leaving, Eziel turned to her mother, saying that she and her friend were going to go and play on the lawn, hoping that her mother would approve of their choice and would not object to fun games in the fresh air. The village was small, with cozy little houses surrounded by green trees and picturesque nature, creating an atmosphere of peace and tranquility where everyone could enjoy the simple joys of life. Two girls were playing happily in the forest in a sunny clearing where bright flowers grew, blooming in a variety of shades and filling the air with delicate aromas. The girl's hand plucked daisies, flowers that signified tenderness, purity, and simple joy, symbolizing the innocent dreams and bright hopes that lived in her heart. Smiling happily, Eziel loudly announced that she was going to make a beautiful flower bouquet for their mother to surprise her and bring some joy on this day. Claire happily agreed that it was a great idea and, inspired by her friend's suggestion, asked for another flower bouquet to be made for herself. The little lady herself was bored, and the wind that ruffled her black hair only increased this feeling, causing the little girl to sigh and look around for entertainment or something interesting that could dispel the melancholy. Looking at the village, she did not understand why all the children believed in the May Fairy because, in her opinion, these were just fairy tales and fiction, and it seemed strange to her that the children were ready to perceive these stories as reality. Claire, when she first heard about the witch, immediately realized that it was a lie, because common sense and life experience told her that such stories could not be true, and that true magic existed only in the imagination. Unlike her twin, the little one always felt like a black sheep, whom no one understood or accepted, which made her feel lonely, but she still remained true to herself, striving for self-expression. Their mother, raising her daughters without a father, did everything possible to provide them with a cozy and warm home, trying to give them the love and support that are so necessary for the formation of their personality. However, the small family still moved frequently, and Claire, rubbing her tired eyes, asked if they were going to travel again, hoping that this time they would stay in one place and find at least a little stability. The little girl quickly realized that they were on the run, holding tightly to her mother's hand, who, despite her anxiety, confidently said that when they grew up, they would understand everything and be able to deal with the difficulties that were now haunting them. The lady could also do something that other children could not. By waving her hand, the girl used her magic, causing bright sparks and magical effects around her that were worthy of admiration. The sister laughed happily as the wind her friend had caused playfully tickled her body, filling the atmosphere with the fun and lightness that they both loved so much. Isiel looked in surprise at the flowers that flew away into the blue sky, and her light hair fluttered in the wind, as if they too had become part of this game of nature. The dark-haired girl couldn't refuse her sister's request to return the flowers so she could weave a beautiful wreath out of them, because she knew how much her friend dreamed of it and how it would bring them joy on this sunny day. Claire waved her hand and the flowers swirled in the air, returning to them in a veritable hurricane of bright petals, as if responding to her wish and creating a magical atmosphere around them. The second lady raised her hands in genuine joy and excitement, expressing her genuine delight and deep admiration for how amazing, talented, and truly wonderful her sister was. Lying back on the soft green grass, Claire decided to enjoy this moment of peace and tranquility, knowing that they would soon have to leave again. Mother, who stood by the window with restraint and majesty throughout this entire time, watched with particular severity and tireless attention her girls, who were frolicking merrily in the street. Boredom gradually took hold of the little girl, and in order to bring at least a drop of magic into her gray, monotonous days, she began to cast a spell, rubbing her fingers in the hope that one day magic would help her meet other children just as unusual. Suddenly, Isiel called out loudly to her friend, shouting something unintelligible, and without wasting a second, quickly ran towards her, as if in a hurry to share something important and urgent. The beauty pointed with delight to the flower crown that adorned her head, while behind her stood a group of tall and gloomy men, whose frightening figure contrasted sharply with the joyful smile and delicate decoration. Claire, seized with panic and screaming for her sister, rushed towards her, afraid that she could be harmed at any moment, ready to sacrifice everything for her safety. Suddenly, heavy footsteps were heard in the silence, and behind the little girl, a tall, booted male figure appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, filling the air with an unsettling presence. It was a man whose face was hidden in shadow, and he was wearing expensive clothes that emphasized his enigma and high position, which added an air of mystery to his image. The man dropped to one knee next to the girl, trying to get to her level so that their eyes would meet and he could speak to her with kindness and understanding. Without thinking twice, Claire made the decision to use her magic to drive the man away and protect herself and her sister, determined and ready to fight any battle for their safety. But suddenly the magic dissolved in her small hands, as if something invisible had blocked it, leaving Claire confused and despairing, as she realized that the magic had not worked as intended. The little girl froze in shock when the guy, with a smirk on his face, said that he was pleased to know that the little lady at such a young age already had mastered the basics of magic, causing mixed feelings of delight and fear in her heart. The man was stunningly handsome, with softly falling blonde hair and unusual eyes that radiated mystery, which emphasized his refined appearance and clearly noble origin. Claire froze in place, unable to tear her eyes away from the older boy standing in front of her. She was shocked to realize that he looked remarkably similar to her, like a reflection from the distant future, which caused a storm of mixed feelings in her soul. The aristocrat sat down next to the child, his lovely long cloak softly stretching across the grass, creating a contrast between the luxury of his clothing and the simplicity of the surrounding nature. Suddenly, the little girl, realizing that she and her friend were in an extremely dangerous situation, turned sharply to face her, realizing that now they were alone and there was a slight hint of anxiety in the air, emphasizing their vulnerability and defenselessness. Esiel, hidden behind her back, Claire, with unconcealed alarm on her face, resolutely shouted at the strange strangers, insistently demanding that they not come any closer to them, while waving her hand in their direction to emphasize her threat. A handsome nobleman, with refined manners and an enigmatic smile, slowly approached them and, casting an attentive glance, asked if the girls were twins, as if wanting to unravel their secret and learn more about their unusual connection. After which, with a serious expression on his face, he asked if they were Claire and Ijel, as if trying to establish their true identities and understand what role they played in this mysterious world. The man smiled slightly, trying to reassure the children and not look too menacing. His friendly expression was meant to dispel their fears and set them in a friendly mood. Peering out from behind her relative, Esiel stared curiously at the lovely smile of the stranger, whose charm and sincere light in his eyes made her forget about her worries and fears for a moment. And after that, she, smiling joyfully from ear to ear with obvious relief and happiness, as if feeling support and understanding, looked at him, forgetting about her fears. Unlike Claire, who remained wary, the girl behaved in a friendly manner and asked the name of the strange, handsome man with genuine interest, thereby wanting to establish a connection with him and learn more about the mysterious man in front of her. One of the lady's hands involuntarily tensed near her dress when the man introduced himself as Artzel, Constantine de Sadios. His name sounded with such impressive grace that a sense of importance and mystery hung in the air. It was a tradition among the nobility to give the father's name to the child who most resembled the mother, and vice versa, which symbolized their family ties and unique connections, creating a special atmosphere of respect for the parents' merits and heritage. Feeling sweat running down her face, the little girl gathered her courage and, with a slight trepidation in her voice, asked the strange gentleman what he wanted from them, trying to remain confident despite the difficult situation. Suddenly, a loud cry was heard, and the woman in a panic rushed towards her daughters, trying to find them among the crowd. Anxiety filled her heart, and fear for the well-being of the children made her move faster. Esiel, with a joyful smile shining on her face, cheerfully turned towards her mother, and, full of happiness and love, exclaimed in response to her, filling the space around with tenderness and affection. Stopping tiredly to catch her breath, the beauty looked at those around her, and with a slight smile said that it was time to eat, emphasizing the importance of taking care of yourself and enjoying moments of relaxation in the company of friends. However, Carlotta, that was her name, froze in shock when she saw an old acquaintance standing in front of her, and memories of past meetings suddenly filled her mind, making her heart beat faster. The maiden, hugging one of her daughters, said with firm determination in her voice that she had never thought that fate would bring her together with him again. She was sure that the wonderful daughters would be much better off and calmer without his presence. Turning away abruptly from her former lover, Carlotta felt a wave of irritation and pain growing inside her, and with difficulty holding back her emotions, she asked why he had come, wanting to leave this unpleasant place as soon as possible. The Duke hastened to stop the lady with a serious expression on his face, declaring that circumstances had changed and he could not let her go so easily because now their destinies were intertwined, and new horizons full of surprises were opening up before them. Claire, listening in amazement, realized that this man was their mother's husband, and soon their conversation naturally turned to divorce, which she could not believe, being in a state of inner turmoil. Constantine explained that it was simply impossible to continue like this, because his former lover had almost been executed in the past, and this event had left an indelible mark on his soul. Suddenly, Esiel, realizing that her mother could have died, burst into loud cries that could not help but attract the attention of those around her, like a cry for help, asking for support and understanding. Carlotta, seeing that the little girl needed support, quickly approached her and hugged her tightly, trying to calm her down, saying tender words that now everything would be fine, and together they would cope with any difficulties. At this moment, the aristocrat's face reflected deep feelings. It changed, and an expression of regret and sorrow appeared on it, as if she realized that something terrible was happening, causing sadness and melancholy in her heart. It is quite possible that he felt deep guilt that his pregnant wife had been forced to flee because of his actions, and this feeling tormented his soul like an unquenchable spark, reminding him of the consequences of his decisions. Hugging one of the girls tightly, the mother muttered in a low voice that if the only way for her to survive was to live as the duke's wife, then the nobleman should tell everyone that the lady was dead to give her a chance for the future. In a cold tone, Carlotta ordered her ex-husband to inform everyone that a person of royal blood could not survive outside the palace walls and left this world in the shadow of cruel circumstances. The lady herself was content to continue raising her girls, remaining out of sight, unnoticed and quiet, like a shadow that carefully guards its loved ones, not wanting to attract unnecessary attention and danger. Claire watched with curiosity her so-called father, whom she had previously heard about only from her mother's stories, and now, seeing him in person, she experienced mixed feelings, wariness, interest, and hope that the meeting could change everything. There were rumors that Constantine was an important person, on close terms with the emperor, and that in the past he had fought with sword and shield in defense of his country and earned the respect of his comrades. Others claimed that he married the daughter of a former emperor, thereby strengthening his ties with the aristocracy and gaining additional influence in political circles, which further emphasized his importance in society. And then he raised the fiery torches and began a rebellion against the tyrant, inspiring people to fight for freedom and justice, as if igniting hope for change in their hearts. Mother, being a representative of ancient royal blood, proudly wore not only a crown but also exquisite jewelry as a symbol of her high status, and maintained majestic manners and noble posture like a true aristocrat. Claire's grandfather, who preceded the emperor, was a cruel tyrant who stopped at nothing to use a terrible curse on his own sister and then murdered her in cold blood to seize the throne and assert his power. Clutching the hem of her mother's skirt, the girl could not comprehend or believe that her loving mother had once been the daughter of a former fallen villain whose dark reputation would forever remain in history. With a decisive step, Constantine went to his wife, asking her a question full of hidden excitement. Did she really believe that that man had lived all this time in prosperity without experiencing difficulties? Reaching out his hand but not daring to touch, the man looked at his wife with pain in his eyes, quietly saying that without her he did not live, but only existed, like a shadow of his own soul, having lost the meaning of life. Waving his cloak and turning sharply, the aristocrat calmly but with firm confidence asked to escort the girls to a safe place because it was about to get dark quickly, and it was too dangerous to stay here. In the distance, a magnificent red carriage awaited them, decorated with exquisite details, and with a coachman sitting confidently on the box, ready to take them to a safe place, away from the impending danger. Leaning towards her mother's ear, Eziel asked quietly and carefully if they were going to ride on the wonderful transport they had dreamed of all these years, her eyes shining with excitement and anticipation. Claire did not particularly share her sister's happiness, for events had moved too quickly. Was this really a punishment for her complaining of boredom earlier, and now her own feelings had become an instrument of doubt? The girl's hands tightly grabbed the palms of her relative, and her voice, full of sincere delight, loudly asked to go together, share this moment, and open a new chapter in their lives, full of adventure and joy. Without thinking twice, Eziel pulled her sister towards the carriage to sit down and ride with the breeze, feeling how the fresh air filled their hearts with joy and freedom, promising unforgettable moments together. Thoughtfully closing her eyes, Carlotta could not understand who exactly the girl had grown into, being so life-loving and cheerful, as if her bright mood was caused by magic that filled their world with bright colors. The father approached the mother of his daughters, and gently grabbing her hand, said with a smile that it was definitely not him, meaning that Eziel's bright energy and love of life was the result of love and care, and not his harsh character. When Carlotta felt stressed, she would often gently rub her temples with her fingers, as if this would help her get rid of the inner discomfort and find peace. That's how, carefully observing her mother's actions, Claire understood that they were expecting another move, which would again bring into their lives not only a sense of uncertainty, but also a feeling of excitement mixed with sadness. This time, when the Duke carefully grabbed the lady by the hands, it seemed that he already guessed about the strange habit and wanted to calm her down, giving her confidence with his touch to dispel anxiety and fear. The servants respectfully opened the doors of the transport for the little ones, allowing her to enter, and did so with such grace that even the most demanding passengers could not help but appreciate this gesture. Esiel joyfully and enthusiastically described how incredibly beautiful it was inside, as if every element of the interior had been carefully selected to create an atmosphere of true comfort and splendor, making the heart fill with joy and admiration. The soft seats were decorated in exquisite shades, and the wooden walls gave the room a special charm. Everything around was done with impeccable taste and luxury, creating an atmosphere of coziness and elegance that could not fail to delight. However, the steps were too high, and so the man kindly offered his help to the little girls so that they could climb up easily and safely, avoiding unnecessary difficulties and fears. Constantine extended his hand and offered his support to his daughters, helping them into the carriage ready for their journey. The gesture was full of care and consideration, and the daughters felt how important it was to have such a reliable and sensitive person by their side. Turning to face each other, the little aristocrats simultaneously uttered the word "lady," clearly shocked that someone dared to call them that. The unexpected compliment caused them confusion mixed with pride. As light as a feather, the nobleman carefully grabbed Esiel and gently placed her on one of the seats, making sure that she felt comfortable and protected. Claire was about to say that she could handle it herself, but before she could utter a word, strong and reliable hands quickly grabbed her daughter under the armpits and lifted her up, as if she were light and fragile. Now the girls were once again seated together on the soft and comfortable seat, and Esiel was genuinely glad of the comfort that surrounded them because it allowed them to relax, enjoy their company, and forget about all the worries that might trouble them. Constantine, in turn, could not help but notice that the clothes of the girl with dark hair were dirty and required attention because there was embarrassment in her look, and the unnoticeable stains on her clothes clearly spoke of her poor status. Before leaving, he added that as soon as he and her mother finished talking, they would immediately return to be there again and support their girls during this difficult time. On one of the aristocrat's fingers, a wedding ring glittered, studded with precious stones that emitted a soft glow and gave his hand a special elegance, emphasizing his status and refined taste. The nobleman was somewhat reminiscent of a wolf who, following barely noticeable tracks in the snow, persistently searched for his runaway wife, showing determination and instinctive confidence, as if he knew that no obstacle would stop him on the way to his goal. He howled with inconsolable grief, unable to come to terms with the tragedy that had happened and changed his life forever, leaving a deep wound in his heart and a spiritual emptiness that could not be filled by anything. Politely, like a true gentleman, Constantine extended his hand to the lady, impatiently awaiting the necessary answer, hoping that this moment would be the beginning of something wonderful. The woman accepted the help gratefully, stepping carefully up the slippery steps of the carriage, and finally sat inside, feeling a sense of confidence and hope for the best growing within her. Taking a deep breath, Carlotta asked her husband where he was going to take them, and was relieved to hear in response that a safe place had been found not far from here where they could hide from danger and rest. However, at that moment, a loud cry was heard, and a small hand reached out to her with a white and innocent flower, which seemed to glow against the disturbing surroundings, reminding her of purity and hope even in the most difficult times. Smiling happily, Esiel held out her gift with trepidation, giving the stranger with whom fate had brought them together for this brief moment a moment of warmth and joy that could brighten a gray day and add bright colors to life. Constantine was clearly at a loss, looking in surprise at his daughter, who seemed to be glowing with happiness and innocence, filling the atmosphere around them with joy and childish innocence. Stunned by surprise, he listened as Esiel excitedly explained that it was a rose hip, one of her favorite flowers, which brought back tender memories of a carefree childhood and magical moments spent in the garden. Suddenly, a happy smile appeared on the face of the fearless Duke, as if the rays of the sun had broken through the clouds, illuminating the man's heart and filling his soul with joy that he had not felt for a long time. But at that moment, Mother sternly ordered Eziel to return back to his place so that they could continue on their way, and Mother's commanding voice brought clarity to the chaos that had arisen around them, forcing everyone to focus on the journey. Listening attentively to his wife's instructions, the man carefully closed the carriage door, trying not to embarrass the ladies with his presence and thus showing respect for their delicate feelings. However, as soon as he left and turned away, the man continued to smile, enjoying his daughter's gift, which was a beautiful flower, gently inhaling the scent of this plant and enjoying its beauty. Claire, looking out the window, immediately realized that her uncle was not a simple man and could not understand her mother's strict and rude attitude towards him, which only increased her bewilderment and desire to understand this situation. Suddenly, Eziel jumped up on the seat next to her sister and with genuine delight said that she would like to travel by carriage all the time, enjoying the fresh air and scenery. Carlotta looked as if she had long been accustomed to traveling on such expensive and luxurious transport that amazed the imagination and caused admiration. Noticing her daughter's attentive and insightful gaze, she couldn't help but ask what the little girl was thinking about, but she just waved it off, as if trying to hide her thoughts and feelings from the outside world. The servant, noticing her distressed expression, could not contain his anxiety, and Carlotta, feeling agitated, clasped her hands in confusion, fearing for the future of her family, which seemed to hang in the balance. The girl herself wanted to tell her mother a lot, but at some point she realized that now was not the best time for this, and that some answers might be too painful or difficult to voice. The vehicle sped through green, grassy fields, and the bright blue sky stretched above, sparkling in the rays of the sun, creating a feeling of freedom and vastness. Soon night fell and the stars began to shine in the sky, and dark trees began to appear around, creating an atmosphere of mystery and silence, as if nature was wrapped in a night blanket. Claire, lost in thought, looked out the window while her sister slept sweetly next to her, pressed against her shoulder. Drool flowed from Eziel's mouth, and this only added to the tenderness of this touching scene, complete peace and serenity. Suddenly, the Duke's voice was heard, informing the ladies that they would soon arrive at their destination, a voice full of confidence and importance, which brought a note of excitement and curiosity into the atmosphere of expectation, making the ladies' hearts tremble. Rubbing her eyes, Claire stepped out of the carriage, and at that moment Carlotta and her father carefully carried the sleeping Eziel in their arms, creating a touching picture of family care and tenderness that filled the air with a feeling of warmth and love. As soon as the baby's eyes opened, they swelled with surprise and delight when the beauty that she could not help but admire appeared before her. The bright colors of the surrounding world and the magical details of the landscape caused her genuine delight. Their new home was huge, like a palace, with majestic facades and luxurious interiors. Loyal and devoted servants were already awaiting their arrival, ready to welcome the family with joy and respect. Carlotta, without any surprise, calmly and silently moved forward, passing the servants who watched her with curiosity, carefully carrying Eziel in her arms, confidently walking through the majestic halls of the new house. Claire, observing her mother's behavior, realized that she had once been part of this strange and luxurious world, which was so contrasted with their current life, leaving in the girl's heart a feeling of mystery and a desire to know more about her mother's past. For the first time, she saw women with their heads held high, as if they were members of the royal family, real aristocrats, which filled her heart with admiration and the desire to become like them, to perceive all the graces. The nobleman, like his wife, acted with kindness and tenderness, taking his second daughter in his arms, as if protecting her from the entire surrounding world, ready to protect her from adversity and give her all his love and care. Quietly, with a little concern, the man asked his wife if she didn't like their new home, which he had carefully chosen, hoping that it would become a cozy and comfortable nest for them. To this, the aristocrat responded with obvious sarcasm that, of course, she liked it, but the presence of her former lover in this situation was completely unnecessary and only caused inconvenience. Closing his eyes, Constantine expressed his joy that he was able to please the princess, speaking absolutely seriously, unlike his wife, who was always critical. The maids, showing courtesy and respect, politely opened the door to their masters. At that moment, a bright light poured in from within, illuminating the space and creating an atmosphere of magic and anticipation. The man loudly declared that the lady was the daughter of the former emperor and the niece of the current ruler, and therefore the overthrow of the previous monarch could not affect her in any way. Carlotta didn't react to this in any way, but simply walked forward confidently, adding that before discussing serious issues, they should first put their daughters to bed and then have a calm and thorough conversation. But at that moment, the aristocrat's eyes widened in shock when she heard Constantine loudly declare that the emperor had pardoned his wife after the duke removed his name from the list of the founders of the empire. The castle was especially beautiful at night, when the light softly poured from the windows, creating a magical atmosphere, as if it was enveloped in a golden glow, attracting the eyes and filling the hearts with romantic dreams. Turning to her husband, the lady loudly declared that he had gone crazy for committing such a stupid and absurd act, which called into question male common sense and entailed unpleasant consequences. To this, the aristocrat replied with slight contempt that, of course, she had not asked him for anything, and this act was his own decision, which he did not intend to regret, despite her displeasure. Disheveled and slightly agitated, Mother turned to Claire with a request, asking her to take her little sister to her room and put her to bed. Mother herself wanted to talk to their father alone to discuss important matters. Claire, without hiding her concern, demanded that her mother promise that she would not say a single word that she might later regret, realizing how important their relationship was and how easy it was to hurt loved ones. After this, the little girl explained that all her life she could not understand why she was different, and so different from other children, because she had a unique ability. Wind magic, which distinguished her from her peers. At that very moment, the force swirled around the room, embracing the baby's parents like a gentle touch, enveloping them in warmth and love, filling the atmosphere with magic and tranquility. The hand clenched into a fist, and in that moment the magic disappeared, leaving behind only a slight sense of loss. The last ray of light faded into impenetrable darkness, leaving behind an oppressive emptiness and silence in which neither joy nor hope could be heard. Closing her eyes, the girl continued to tell that she did not share her powers with her mother because she considered it abnormal and did not want to upset the former princess, believing that unusual abilities could cause discontent. Carlotta was a self-confident woman, sometimes even selfish, showing her strong personality and independence, which made her a noticeable and memorable figure in society. But Claire could not help but notice how attentively and caringly she looked at her mother, because she was often worried and anxious. Because of this, the little girl often considered herself the main cause of her mother's pain, feeling guilty for her worries and suffering. There was a noticeable difference between the girls. When Eziel was learning her first words, the other daughter could already easily read books and construct entire sentences, which emphasized their different levels of development and abilities. The mother often reached out to her daughter with light hair, always holding her arms ready for a hug. Thus, she wanted to give her warmth and care that could soften all the experiences and worries. Claire, like the black sheep, stopped feeling like a child as she grew older. She realized that she had become a full-fledged person with her own thoughts and feelings that set her apart from those around her. The little girl could not imagine how painful it was for a mother to look at one of her daughters who was unlucky enough to be born without feelings. Realizing that such a loss makes their relationship more difficult and causes anxiety and sadness in the heart. The birds began to sing loudly as they perched on the tree branch, and a new day began, filling the surrounding world with fresh sounds and aromas, promising new opportunities and adventures. In a clearing surrounded by trees and green plants stood a small wooden house that seemed to fit perfectly into the surrounding nature, creating an atmosphere of coziness and tranquility. An old woman standing next to another woman was doing household chores and complaining about Claire, claiming that she was a strange child with no emotions. She also recalled that there was a temple in which children similar to her lived. At the mention of handing over my own daughter to a temple for special people, something unexpected happened. The basket of fruit suddenly fell, and the apples, as if emphasizing the anxiety of the moment, scattered on the ground. Carlotta, overcome with anger, chased the assistant out of the house, reacting furiously to the offensive words about the baby, and slammed the door behind her with force, as if wanting to protect her daughter from other people's discontent and condemnation. Claire herself could not help but notice, looking at her mother's back, that she was constantly crying because of her, and even drove away their nanny, feeling guilty for having become the cause of such suffering and worries in the life of her own woman. Asiel gently grabbed her sister's hand, looking sadly and tenderly into her big green eyes. They were different as day and night, but their bond remained strong despite all the differences. However, despite everything, the small family loved the strange girl without feelings and emotions, for which she was sincerely grateful to them, feeling the warmth of their support and care, despite her unusualness. Tears poured from her mother's eyes, and a smile shone on her lips, as if she was trying to hide her sadness behind a mask of joy, creating a contradictory feeling that Claire could grasp, feeling the depth of all the emotions. Standing opposite her husband and daughter, Carlotta listened attentively as the girl said that she felt guilty for the woman crying so often, and her heart filled with sympathy for the little girl. The woman finally agreed to answer all of her daughter's questions, but only after they put their little sister to bed. At that point, it became clear to her that it was important to take the time to give each of them full and honest answers. Thus, Claire was left alone with a mysterious uncle who unexpectedly turned out to be their father, and this discovery caused a storm of emotions and bewilderment in her because she could never have imagined that their destinies were so closely intertwined. Feeling uncomfortable and ashamed, the girl looked away, hoping that her mother would return soon and the baby would be able to get off her parents' hands, thereby avoiding the awkward situation and returning to her usual calm. The Asterials were those who, from the heavens, closely watched over the people on earth and maintained order throughout the world, as stated in the Holy Scriptures, which prescribed them to protect and guide humanity on the right path. They were fragments that fell from the heavens, demigods with unique abilities who remained to live on earth even after they had fulfilled their heavenly duty, continuing to influence the destinies of people. Thoughtfully, Claire reflected on how the modern Asterials were significantly different from those described in the books about the gods, and it seemed that their essence, powers, and even human traits were transformed. A plate of desserts was placed on the table, which amazed with their taste and uniqueness, filling the festive atmosphere with a sweet aroma and creating a mood of joy and surprise for all those present. The Duke's family sat at a table that was literally bursting with various treats. The generously laid table beckoned the guests with its delicious dishes and tempted them with an irresistible desire to try every delicacy. The little girl stared at the desserts, unable to tear herself away from their abundance, and then asked hopefully if they could have the same feast tomorrow morning when Asiel woke up. The aristocrat nodded quietly, supporting his daughter's words, and with a kind smile in his eyes, he thought about how wonderful it was to spend time at the family table, enjoying the communication and delicious food that always united them. Claire herself could not understand whether the strange man was a demigod because his smile seemed surprisingly human, despite his divine appearance, and this contradiction only increased her internal doubts and desire to unravel his secret. The butler bowed politely, wishing his masters a pleasant appetite. His face lit up with a kind smile, and his demeanor emphasized respect and devotion to their well-being. A deathly silence fell between the members of the small family. No one knew how to begin a conversation, and the silence, like a heavy blanket, covered them, creating an atmosphere of awkwardness and confusion in which every word seemed too loud and out of place. The silence was broken by Carlotta, who asked her daughter if she really didn't want to try the delicacies and exquisite dishes that were brought to them from the kitchen, because such an opportunity would please any gourmet. To this, the little girl dryly replied that she would eat in the morning when her sister woke up, preferring to postpone the treat until the moment when they could enjoy the dishes together and share the joy of communication. Noticing his wife's bewilderment, the aristocrat explained that he had previously promised Claire that he would prepare the same desserts in the morning for her and for Asiel, because he wanted their morning to begin with joy and sweet pleasure. The woman nervously took the cup and drank the tea, saying that it seemed like she had something important to tell her daughter, and her heart was filled with anxiety at the thought that the revelation could change their relationship and affect the future of the whole family. The little lady listened attentively to her mother's words that she was read as different from all the other children of the same age, and this did not mean that the little one was bad. Suddenly, Claire asked her family an unexpected question, wondering if she was the Asterial the book spoke of, and this interruption of the quiet conversation caused excitement and surprise. The smart girl couldn't help but notice that she was very similar to her father, who was just as emotionless and calm, and this realization gave rise to mixed feelings in her. Moreover, the two of them possessed magic and could control it with amazing ease, which opened up limitless possibilities for them, allowing them to demonstrate their powers in a variety of situations and overcome obstacles. Here, the Duke suddenly intervened in the conversation and asked his daughter if she had had any difficulties in her relationships with other people. His voice sounded caring, and his eyes showed a sincere desire to understand what was going on in the lady's life. Taking silence for an answer, he continued that his daughter had a special gift that made her unique, and this gift not only distinguished her from others, but also opened doors to new opportunities for her. Not understanding what the strange uncle was talking about, the girl decided to distract herself with dessert, tasting it and enjoying the pleasant sensations that filled her with sweet pleasure and helped her forget about the embarrassment caused by the conversation. Suddenly, she stopped chewing, hearing from her father that she should not approach the emperor and the palace, and also show her abilities in front of other people. The words caused alarm, making her think about what danger her gifts could bring. Crossing his legs, he explained that it was necessary to act within the framework of human laws and hide his powers, since an open display of magical abilities could attract unnecessary attention. Carlotta was displeased and said that her husband was a terrible father because when they first met, he immediately began giving such cruel instructions, and this only emphasized his inability to understand that the girl needed love. Staring at her reflection in the spoon, Claire was once again convinced that the gods in real life were different from those described in books and followed their own laws, which were sometimes incomprehensible and cruel. The deities kept wealth in the form of ornaments and gold for generations, passing them on from generation to generation, and these treasures served not only as symbols of their power, but also as evidence of eternal blessing. However, it is unlikely that the gods cared about the money that lay on the spoon and accumulated, because their true nature was not in material wealth, but in the power and influence that they had over the destinies of people and the world. Setting her cutlery down, the little girl asked if there was anything else she should say to her parents at the table, her eyes shining with sincerity as she sought approval and support, hoping that words could improve the atmosphere at dinner. Claire also couldn't help but notice how upset her mother looked, and even a little angry, and this worry was transmitted to her, making her wonder what could have happened to cause such emotions in her loved one. Staring at his daughter, the Duke asked his wife why, since the beauty knew that children could be born gods, she had not told them about the gift, and there was bewilderment in her voice because he did not understand why such important information remained hidden from them. The confused little girl asked what exactly the adults were talking about. Her curiosity was overwhelming, and she tried to understand why the conversation was taking such a serious turn when there was an atmosphere of wariness and incomprehensibility around. Looking down, Mother told me that Tara was actually the devil who gathered the first Asterial, causing them to become humans. The gods were invisible and pure, like bright beings who tirelessly monitored order and harmony in the world, caring for the well-being of humanity. While Tara was the embodiment of everything bad and vile, with horns on her head and a cold gaze, she looked down on those around her as if she was above everyone else. Then Tara seduced Asteriola, and the deity became mortal, losing all his abilities except one, which still remained and allowed him to exist in a new, limited form. Still not understanding what Carlotta was getting at, the little lady asked what exactly the story meant and what deep meanings and subtext lay behind his words, causing interest and bewilderment. How suddenly everything changed. Life around seemed to be painted in bright colors, and I, not knowing how to tell my daughter about this turn of fate, stood in confusion, realizing the full complexity of the situation. The Duke took the initiative and, gently nudging his wife, said that it was best for her to tell her daughter everything, since he understood how important it was for their family. The truth was that Carlotta was actually a Tara, and feeling awkward, she looked down in embarrassment, as if trying to hide her true nature from those around her. Claire watched imperturbably as her mother, her face red with embarrassment, dropped her head into her hands, unable to utter a word, and in the silence filled with anxious anticipation, it seemed as if the whole world around her froze in anticipation of her reaction. While Constantine chuckled with a slight blush on his cheeks, he clearly found his wife's embarrassment amusing, and his cheerful look betrayed how much he enjoyed watching the woman's reaction. He also gave the girl a sincere smile, because this is how the Taras with Astariols gave the gods emotions, filling their hearts with living feelings and warmth, which enriched their existence, making it brighter and more intense. Thus the Duke felt the possibility of feeling awaken in his heart, and even the excitement of realizing his love for a daughter he had never seen filled his fragile soul with warmth and tenderness. This also became a real disaster for the Astariol, because the moment they lost their impeccability, they became bound demons, prisoners of their own emotions and feelings, which ultimately threatened their freedom and true nature. Worried, Claire clasped her hands in front of her, feeling fear creeping up on her, afraid that something similar might happen to her someday, as every moment of her life reminded her of how easy it was to lose control of herself. The Duke went on to explain that demons were not very favored in the Holy Scriptures, as they were mortal beings with whom deities could fall in love, and this relationship often led to complex and confusing consequences. Carlotta tried to calm the girl down, placing her hand on her knees, while she, in turn, curiously asked where she should look for her own container, full of hope and excitement. The aristocrat noted that she had a chance to meet her true soulmate, but she also faced many obstacles on the way to this meeting. A long and thorny path of life, full of unexpected turns, awaited her. Bowing his head, the man, looking intently at his beloved, added that the whole world would be reflected in her eyes, full of dreams, hopes, and endless possibilities that awaited them ahead. The woman hastened to reassure her daughter, saying that it did not matter whether they had a container or not. The beauty confidently added that Claire was a smart girl, capable of coping with any difficulties on her own. This did not particularly calm the little girl who, imagining how she found her mate and their hands joined in a tender embrace, was tormented by the question, would the demon love her as much as she loved him? It was scary to realize that love might not be mutual when the guy turned away from the deity who confessed his feelings, and his face distorted with disgust. It was unlikely that the girl could cope with the unbearable pain that her other half caused, and stretching out her hand forward in complete despair, she realized that every moment spent without mutual love took away a piece of her soul. So Claire was quick to ask her parents how they could talk so calmly about such important things, as if these conversations did not concern them personally, and she did not understand why they did not feel worried about such serious topics. A terrible grin appeared on his enemy's lips as he stated that it was better to put up with his mate's hatred throughout his life than to live without her, because her absence caused unbearable pain. The girl realized with horror that this strange uncle was actually obsessed with their mother, and this thought filled her tender heart with anxiety and fear, as if the shadow of evil was hanging over her. The little girl hung her head sadly, afraid of growing up to be like her father, while Carlotta, unable to contain her emotions, jumped up from her seat and furiously called her husband a crazy idiot, feeling both contempt and resentment towards him. The Duke agreed with his beloved's wise words, but noted that he should become a living example of what he wanted to teach his child, in order to inspire him to follow the right path and show how important it is to follow his principles. Carlotta, reassuring her daughter, assured her that whoever appeared in her life would certainly fall in love with such a wonderful girl like her, and everything would be fine with them, like in a fairy tale where the brightest dreams come true. This beautiful moment was ruined by Constantine, who said that there were people who might not like Claire, and his words seemed to cast a shadow on the atmosphere of joy and hope, enveloping everyone in a gloomy foreboding. Angry at her husband, the woman grabbed the baby in her arms, looking irritatedly at the man who, without thinking about the consequences, uttered inappropriate words, as if not realizing how they could hurt. She angrily demanded that the aristocrat immediately apologize and take back his words, as if these words, spoken thoughtlessly, could leave an unhealed wound in the heart and disturb the atmosphere of calm in their home. He had no choice but to get up from his seat and apologize to his daughter, placing his hand on his heart as if he was trying to prove the sincerity of his words and correct the mistake he had made without thinking about the feelings of those around him. After seeing his family off to their sleeping quarters, Constantine tenderly wished the lady good night and sweet dreams, hoping that a deep sleep would be full of magic and peace. The ladies silently watched the mysterious man who had suddenly appeared in their lives and turned everything upside down, leaving behind a trail of intriguing changes and unforgettable emotions. Suddenly the man froze, hearing the words of his beloved, who insistently ordered him to stay, instilling hope and fear at the same time, as if every woman's word wrapped itself around his heart, not allowing him to leave. Slender legs and elegant shoes confidently walked forward, producing a loud echo with each step, which resounded throughout the room as if reflecting off the walls and filling the space with the sound of persistence and determination. Claire watched her mother in amazement, unable to tear her eyes away from the confidence that shone in her eyes, as if she was ready to overcome any obstacles in her path. The woman, in turn, grabbed her husband tightly by the front of his clothes, lifting him up with her hands in a cruel grip and not allowing him to take a single step, thereby pinning her interlocutor to the spot with her irresistible will. The former couple in love froze. Their eyes met and their bodies remained motionless in anticipation, as if time had stopped, and each of them hoped that something important and unforgettable would happen. Carlotta sternly ordered her husband to listen carefully, because she had spoken only once. The woman did not feel any hatred towards the Duke, but only felt the need to convey to him important words, full of wisdom and sincerity. The boy opened his mouth in surprise, not understanding what was happening, as if the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat, and his thoughts were racing, trying to comprehend the sudden change in the situation. The woman explained that she had previously felt hatred towards him and everyone around her when she was locked in the temple for special people, feeling completely alone and isolated from the world, which emphasized the suffering. And what was most irritating was how persistently the aristocrat continued to return to her, even after their arguments, as if nothing could break the bond that, in the woman's opinion, should have been broken long ago. Claire listened attentively to the words of her mother, who, after running away with the children, had a lot of time to think and change her opinion of her husband, reflecting on what had happened and finding the strength to understand him better. The man froze in shock when he heard that all this time Carlotta had hated the very Duke who had always so fiercely rushed to her aid, trying to protect and shield her from all dangers, which seemed absolutely incredible. Magic swirled around the couple as the woman continued to say that in the past, no one believed that she could be his destiny, leaving a deep sadness and unfulfilled hopes in his heart. And then the girl hated all those who laughed at the god kneeling before an ordinary woman, not understanding that even the simplest feelings can have incredible power and meaning. Looking out the window in the darkness of the night, the girl could not admit her feelings for the deity, who decided to bow before her, experiencing both awe and confusion from such an unusual meeting. However, now that Constantine never went back on his word, remaining devoted only to his beloved, Carlotta was able to believe that she had been his destiny all this time, realizing the full depth and significance of their connection. The woman, instinctively approaching the man and blaming herself for realizing it only now, held on tightly to his clothes and confessed her true feelings, as if afraid that these words might disappear as quickly as they came. The candlelight burned brightly and the fire danced, creating a magical atmosphere, as if every moment was filled with living energy and mystery, and the soft flickering of light drew mysterious patterns on the walls. The nobleman's eyes widened at the lady's quiet confession, promising to confess her feelings if they ever met again, leaving him waiting and hoping that this meeting would still happen. Tara whispered into her god's ear that she had loved him all this time as much as he had loved her, filling the moment with the depth and sincerity that permeated their connection. After this, the woman used her hands to push the nobleman away from her so that space appeared between them, as if she wanted to restore the boundaries for a moment and consider her feelings. Involuntarily, she grabbed Claire's hand and pulled her along with her, and with confident steps they headed down the long corridor, which seemed to lead them into a world free of pressure and anxiety, leaving behind all the worries and uncertainties. Now Carlotta looked different. A calm confidence appeared on her gentle face, like a light haze, and her gentle smile shone, giving her appearance a special warmth and attractiveness. The Duke himself froze, like a believer who had received a revelation from God himself, unable to believe such a pleasant truth that had turned all his ideas about the world and love upside down. A new day had dawned, and the sun was shining brightly on the estate, flooding every detail with light, while the trees around swayed gently in the wind, creating an atmosphere of peace and harmony that was pleasing to the eye and filled the soul with calm. Esiel finally woke up, rubbing her large eyes, which still bore traces of sleep, with her hand and, taking a deep breath, tried to realize that a new day had already arrived, full of opportunities and unexpected adventures. The little girl could not help but notice that the new bed and clothes were surprisingly soft and pleasant to the touch, as if enveloping her with tenderness and care, giving a feeling of comfort and security in this new world. In a state of shock, the girl sat on the bed, looking at her sleeping mother and looking around at the rich room with expensive furniture, unable to comprehend how they ended up here and what awaited them ahead. Claire was awakened by a noise nearby and opened her eyes to see the blanket rising up as if someone was trying to get out from under it, which caused her mixed feelings of surprise and curiosity. Esiel, hiding under the blanket, wondered if they had died and gone to heaven because everything around her seemed so unusual, and she couldn't help but notice how the old Duke was remarkably similar to Claire. Squinting sleepily, the little girl remembered that her sweet sister had really wished for the May Fairy to bring their father back home, and this thought filled the woman's heart with hope and tender joy. Suddenly, the girl with loose hair wondered if their dad could be a good angel after this amazing meeting with a relative. With her mouth open in delight, Esiel offered her amazing version of events. Perhaps their father had lost his memory, and then suddenly, like a bright star, remembered them and decided to return to take them with him to heaven. The baby immediately covered her mouth with her hands when she realized that her mother was still sleeping and should not be woken up. She decided that it was better to wait so as not to disturb the sweet sleep of her beloved mother, which she needed so much. The maids entered the room, addressing the young ladies with a kind smile, offering their help in helping them gather all the necessary things and dress nicely. Claire did not at all share her sister's delight at the fact that they now had their own servants. She felt that this status brought no advantages, but only added complications and unnecessary expectations. The girls walked happily and carefree next to a beautiful fountain, which was located on a cozy street where bright flowers and green trees grew in beautifully maintained gardens, filling the air with fresh aromas of nature. Claire was outraged by the suggestion that they were all dead and passionately shared her opinion with her sister, trying to explain why she could not accept it. Having received a response from Ezieltsi, who confidently stated that she felt quite alive, the lady froze in place, disappointed by her friend's naivety, not understanding how one could ignore the obvious. To confirm the words of her companion, the little girl glanced at the huge and majestic palace that had become their new home, its high towers and graceful balconies sparkling in the sun. After that, she slowly turned around and looked with slight surprise at the maids who stood politely nearby, ready to immediately carry out any order from their masters at any time. Esiel hesitantly placed her finger to her lips and agreed that while this place was not paradise, it was still quite cozy and pleasant to visit. Suddenly, a strong wind arose, and Claire's eyes opened wide in surprise and delight, and her hair, as if alive, began to flutter, dancing in the gusts of fresh air, creating an effect of magic and sorcery in this moment. It was the sisters' fault. who suddenly stood in front of her interlocutor, smiling happily and causing surprise, as if suddenly interrupting the conversation with her bright appearance and relaxed atmosphere. There, opposite them, that strange uncle suddenly appeared, who decided to take them with him to his luxurious house, appearing as a refined nobleman with elegant manners and a mysterious aura that aroused interest. Grabbing his relative's hands, Esiel confidently walked towards the man, greeting him with a kind smile and wishing him a pleasant morning, filling the atmosphere with lightness and warmth. Constantine was not alone. Behind him stood an attractive guy in a formal suit, with large expressive eyes hidden behind stylish glasses, which gave him a special elegance and intelligence. Covering her mouth with her hand in embarrassment, Esiel realized that they were no longer alone, and the one she was talking to was screaming loudly right in front of the stranger, causing her to feel awkward and want to disappear from his sight. The handsome man bowed politely and greeted the aristocrats, introducing himself as the butler, whose name was Baronet Louis Resana, radiating grace and confidence that only emphasized his elegant appearance. Smiling, the boy said that he had served the Duke since his youth, telling about it with pride and tenderness, as if every word was imbued with respect for his long-standing work and devotion to his master. The girl's hand firmly grasped her uncle's sleeve, and she called him with a gentle voice, sincerely trying to attract his attention, as if she had many ideas and questions that she wanted to discuss with him. Esiel, with the naivety of a child, asked the man who had given them shelter if he was a real duke, looking at him with curiosity and hope, as if she was looking for confirmation in his words of her dreams of a noble life and magical adventures. Slowly, Constantine nodded, confirming the little girl's words, his gaze remaining indifferent and devoid of emotion, as if he himself did not share the delight and curiosity that shone in Esiel's eyes. Suddenly, the man's hands gently touched the girl's light hair and carefully attached a hair clip with a cute bunny to it, adding playfulness and weightlessness to the image. This gesture was intended to emphasize youthful spontaneity and tenderness. After this, the handsome man approached his second daughter and carefully adjusted the sleeve of her bright dress, which was slightly wrinkled, giving the gesture a note of care and attention. The Duke wanted to make sure that she felt comfortable and confident in her outfit. The little girls froze in front of the aristocrat, who was sitting on his knees in front of them, carefully hugging his children, radiating warmth and tenderness, as if he wanted to create an atmosphere of safety around them, despite all external circumstances. Esiel put her hand to her mouth and said quietly that Claire was very similar to the Duke's strange uncle. Her large eyes were shining with curiosity, and her voice sounded as if she was sharing her small but important discovery with the world. And after that, she revealed their little secret, that her sister's hair was as white as the nobleman's when her mother did not dye it, emphasizing this amazing resemblance with undisguised delight. When Constantine stared at her with his attentive gaze, the girl hastened to explain that her dear mother had prepared a special dye to hide the unusual white color of her hair. With a smile on his face, the man agreed that Carlotta was undoubtedly a master of her craft, brewing potions beautifully and demonstrating true professionalism in this amazing art. Suddenly, Esiel, full of determination, turned to the nobleman with a request, as well as with one delicate question that required special attention and tact, because she understood that every step could have a significant impact on their future relationship. The girl explained with a smile that she and Claire were twins and that they would both be turning 9 in February, which certainly made their bond special and unforgettable. With a smile on her face and genuine curiosity, Esiel asked if the handsome man was their real dad, because her interest in family secrets and origins grew every day, and she could not help but ask herself this important question. The man nodded again with the same calm and sweet smile, thus indicating that he was their parent, and his friendly expression created an atmosphere of warmth and trust. Unable to contain her delight, the little girl, with boundless, sincere joy, threw herself into the arms of her newfound parent, as if wanting to forever imprint this touching moment in her heart. Extending his hand towards his second daughter, Constantine warmly invited her to join them, hoping that this kind gesture would bring them closer together and create warmth and love in their small family circle. Claire's eyes widened in sudden, delighted surprise, and her mouth dropped open, and she stood there awkwardly, unable to believe what was happening around her, as if time had frozen in this magical moment. However, after taking a few steps towards his family, the man, filled with warmth and care, tenderly hugged the baby, as if he wanted to protect her from the whole world, giving her a feeling of security and unconditional love. Now all three of them hugged each other, and the little girls felt themselves under the reliable protection of their father, as if a strong wall of love and care surrounded them at this touching moment. Claire, blushing with embarrassment, felt a surge of happiness and slight excitement, as if an inner light illuminated her soul and filled her heart with joy, and her face blossomed like a spring flower, reflecting all her feelings. The butler, watching such a sweet scene of family reunion, also could not hold back his smile, because the joy and warmth that reigned around touched his heart and filled the atmosphere with unforgettable emotions. The fountains exuded beauty and grace, and the sun's rays, reflecting off the streams of water, created mesmerizing reflections that seemed to dance in the air, filling the space with life-giving force and joy. There was a family idyll between them, and they continued to remain in this touching moment. The man, kneeling, tenderly hugged his daughters, pressing them to his chest, as if he wanted to protect and give them his love and care. Soon the evening came, and the kids, with smiles on their faces, sat at the table enjoying sweet desserts that were prepared with love, creating a picture of fun and joy on this cozy family evening. Claire watched out of the corner of her eye as her mother sat outside the window in the company of her father, feeling pride and tenderness mix in her heart as she looked at this idol that she had dreamed of seeing for so long. Carlotta, frowning, resolutely ordered her husband to tell her everything immediately, her voice filled with insistence, reflecting concern and a desire to clarify the situation that was clearly troubling her. He, in turn, with an imperturbable face, clarified what exactly she wanted to know, his calmness contrasting with her emotional tension. He was ready to listen to all questions before sharing his own thoughts. Claire sat awkwardly at the table, aware that she was the only one who had heard her parents' conversation, and her heart was filled with a mixed feeling of anxiety and worry because she understood that knowing their secrets could change everything in their lives. The woman recalled that her husband had organized her pardon, using his fame and name on the list of the empire's founders, which gave this event special significance and emphasized his influence in society, despite all the difficulties and contradictions. The man agreed with her that this was indeed the case, and the smart little girl immediately realized that they were talking about a coup in the empire, realizing how important this event was for the future of their family and the empire itself. Staring at her reflection in a cup of tea, the girl thought about how such events had not affected her before, but now they had become an integral part of her life, making her feel the seriousness and weight of what was happening around her. Thinking about it, Claire realized that after the coup and her mother's brother took the throne, the life of the young princess changed dramatically, plunging the beauty into a world of intrigue and responsibility that she could not have previously dreamed of. The previous emperor, in his quest to seize the throne and all power, had no hesitation in getting rid of his sister, using force to eliminate anyone who might stand in his way. The prince's life was extremely difficult at that time, and he barely survived thanks to the help of his prisoners of war, who, despite all the difficulties, helped him survive and eventually gain the throne, becoming the emperor. With her hands folded in front of her and her eyes fixed on her husband, Carlotta said with concern in her voice that he was definitely not telling her something, leaving her in the dark about what was really going on in their lives. Claire's eyes widened in surprise as the man explained that he had awakened the fermata for the sake of his beloved and swore that Carlotta was his container filled with deep and unconditional love. The cup in her hands shook, and beads of sweat rolled down the little girl's face like a reflection of excitement, revealing all the emotions she was experiencing at this tense moment. At the moment when the conversation turned to that very great fermata, the woman could not help but cover her mouth with her hand, realizing the importance and depth of the topic being discussed, as well as the possible consequences of this discussion for everyone present. The lady, looking at her companion in bewilderment, called him crazy and asked in surprise how exactly he managed to awaken that terrible creature that was terrifying everyone around. Esiel, happily unaware of what her parents were talking about, enjoyed the cakes and sweet desserts, enjoying every bite and involuntarily smiling with pleasure. Fermata was a fiery phoenix with the amazing ability to grant any wishes and make deals while offering tempting and sometimes dangerous conditions. A man could gain incredible power, but if he did not fulfill his part of the contract, a terrible fate awaited him. He would burn in a bright fire, turning to ashes, as if his existence had never had a meaning. Also, everything that belonged to him was burning to the ground, while he limply stretched his hands up, trying to get help, but finding salvation in nothing. Looking at her innocent sister, Claire suddenly remembered the king who broke his oath and burned in fire along with his kingdom, leaving behind only ashes and the bitterness of betrayal. The priests, realizing the importance of protecting ancient secrets and magic, made the difficult decision to place the Fermata into a long and peaceful sleep in the temple, where he could peacefully await the time when his power would be needed again. Calmly and confidently, the Duke declared that he wanted the whole world to be convinced that Carlotta was his true love and faithful companion, with whom he shared all his joys and sorrows. Taking a cup of hot tea in his hands, the man said that he was not worried about burning because he always spoke only the truth, and it is this that gives him confidence and peace in this world. Clutching her face with her hand, the woman muttered that her husband was a real madman who drove her to despair with his actions and strange ideas, plunging her into a world of chaos and misunderstanding. Covering her mouth with her hand, she muttered that everyone around her had previously thought that she and her father had bewitched the aristocrat and did not believe that their connection was sincere, believing that it was only the result of magic or a cunning plan. Suddenly, Esiel caught her sister's attention by offering her a delicious cake filled with sweet cream and fruit, which was so tempting with its appetizing appearance and tempting aroma. The girl leaned over and carefully stabbed the dessert that her relative had handed her with a fork, looking at it with curiosity, as if it were something unusual, and preparing to enjoy every bite of the sweet treat. A shudder ran through her body as Carlotta clutched her chest, wondering what this terrible spell was, inspiring fear and anxiety, as if it was awakening the darkest corners of her mind. The nobleman tried to convince his wife not to be afraid and to calm down, trying to put all the warmth and confidence into his words in order to dispel her fears and help her regain her peace. Smiling happily and leaning back in her chair, Esiel asked curiously what the cake, full of sweet cream and delicate dough, tasted like, as if she was expecting an amazing description of this delicacy. Sitting on the balcony, the girl shouted that the lemon with zest and cream must have been really delicious, and her voice was filled with joy and delight from the memory of the sweet delicacy. The aristocrat tried to hug his wife, but she brushed his hand away and persistently asked about the spell. The woman's voice trembled with anxiety because the mysterious words did not give her peace and caused vague premonitions. The man finally confessed that this mysterious creature forced the god himself to forever obey the will of the emperor, like a shadow that silently followed him at every step, ready to fulfill any whim and desire. From the parents' side, a piercing scream was heard from the mother, which made the girls freeze in horror. Time stopped, and each of them at that moment felt their hearts beat faster from anxiety. Claire was quick to distract her little sister by offering her a taste of one of the delicious desserts she had prepared the day before, hoping that the sweet treat would help dispel all her worries and bring a happy smile back to her face. The woman's eyes darkened, her body trembled with fear, and the horror reflected on her face indicated that she had realized the existence of such a terrible spell that could drive even the bravest and most courageous people crazy. Sitting next to his beloved, Constantine explained that many people feared the gods even more than their own weaknesses, realizing that the powers of higher powers were capable of destroying destinies and rewriting history, leaving only ashes in their wake. Esiel happily muttered that the dessert was very tasty, but noted that such a delicacy was more suitable for her sister, who always preferred sour tastes and enjoyed every drop of acid that added bright shades to life. The dessert was cut carelessly, and the cream ran down the edges, leaving marks and crumbs scattered, dirtying the plate, giving the whole moment a certain casual atmosphere. It showed carelessness and joy from a delicious treat. Carlotta lowered her head and muttered that it was unlikely that her husband would ever serve his father, since there had always been enmity between them and many unforgivable grievances that would not allow any kind of trust to be established. It turned out that Constantine had actually entrusted the key not to his beloved's father, but to a prince named Evan, thereby bringing unexpected consequences into their lives and causing many misunderstandings that were just beginning to unfold. The maiden dreamed that her husband would not be under the spell, and tears quietly rolled down her cheeks while she sat next to him on the sofa, feeling immense melancholy and helplessness in the face of their common misfortune. Smiling carelessly, the boy declared that he was ready to serve the emperor and the prince until death, but there was a slight irony in his voice because, despite everything, he still felt happy, finding joy in his duties and loyalty. The lady did not share his joy, for despite the power of the Fermats, he was still just a dog of the empire, forced to submit to cruel rules and demands that suppressed his true self and dreams of freedom. The Duke explained that if it were not for the spell cast on the lady and her incredible strength, the emperor would hardly have agreed to pardon his beloved, leaving their fates in the hands of cruel circumstances and unpredictable decisions. A piece of cake with delicate cream and bright orange sauce balanced cheerfully on the fork, adding not only a rich taste, but also a sunny hue to this delicious treat, attracting the eye and whetting the appetite. It became apparent that Mom had cast a spell, and Dad was the target of the curse, tightly bound in chains that tied him to unknown forces, leaving the family in a state of despair and fear of what might happen next. The girl realized that the truth was nauseatingly bitter, in sharp contrast to the sweet dessert she had just tasted, and this realization left an unpleasant aftertaste in her soul. Having confessed their love for each other, the woman could not understand why this feeling brought such deep unhappiness, as if the joy she expected was hidden behind the clouds of anxiety and uncertainty that obscured her heart. Looking down at the floor, she added that she valued him above all else and, therefore, sincerely wanted her husband to be happy, even if she had to sacrifice her own desires and feelings to achieve this. In a cold tone, the man asked since when she started thinking about others, as if his words were sharp as a blade, tearing apart the remaining thread of trust and understanding between them. This caused bewilderment in the lady, while the Duke remembered the events of the past perfectly, every moment of which continued to torment him with memories and left scars in his soul that did not heal over time. On the wedding day, the beloved, full of despair, tried to commit suicide in front of everyone, shocking the guests and leaving them confused because the joy of this celebration was instantly replaced by grief, and a desperate step forever changed the course of events. After the aristocrat confessed that she was his soulmate, the woman bitterly reproached him and threatened to commit suicide if anyone dared to tell about it. Sitting next to his wife, the guy added, not without irony, that they had been married for 3 years already, and every day of their life was filled with new scandals, full of passion and unexpected turns. The man explained with great sincerity that his love for his wife was absolute, encompassing every aspect of their relationship, including the heated arguments and moments of depression when she needed support and understanding the most. After that, he promised to treat her the same way, regardless of her shortcomings, and to create an atmosphere of mutual understanding and support, where each of them could feel loved and valued despite their weaknesses. It became increasingly clear that the father was seeking to return his family to their former life of luxury and aristocratic wealth, dreaming of the times when they enjoyed the comfort and privileges of high society. The mother, full of tender feelings for her husband, did not want to return to her native land because her heart was attached to him, and she also did not want to live in a snake's nest, full of dangers and betrayals. The tired girl stared thoughtfully at the table, immersed in her thoughts and pondering how she could solve this difficult problem that was bothering her so much. The palace, majestic and huge, radiated beauty, sparkling in the bright sun, which slowly sank beyond the horizon, painting the sky in amazing and magical shades of the sunset, creating an incredible spectacle that captivated everyone. Carlotta, lost in her thoughts, carefully examined the painting, not taking her expressive green eyes away from the amazing details that captured her attention and evoked real emotions in her soul. After this, she resolutely turned to the Duke with a question about the whereabouts of his daughters, to which he replied that they were happily strolling in the picturesque garden, enjoying the warm, sunny day and fresh air. The man, leaning against the door, looked into the distance, turning away from his wife, and sadness and longing could be seen in his eyes, as if he was looking for answers to questions that were haunting him. But suddenly his gaze was drawn to the screams coming from below, from the ground, and he, alert, turned his attention to the source of the noise, feeling how the tension in the air was growing with every second. There on the ground, the daughters were happily playing, using Claire's magic. Eziel was laughing happily, running around in circles without a care, creating an atmosphere of happiness and magic around her, and their laughter echoed throughout the garden. The parents, with tender smiles on their faces, watched their children, quietly and sincerely rejoicing that they were having such a fun time, filling the air around them with joy and carefree laughter. The man became wary when he heard that his beloved wanted to leave soon and take the children back to the village, and anxiety and reluctance to part with those who brought so much happiness to his life flared up in his fragile heart. Coldly, with genuine determination, the lady declared that she had no intention of returning to the palace and was ready to reclaim her title of princess, feeling within herself the strength and independence she had sought for so long. The adults looked at each other, understanding the tension of the situation. The lady wanted to leave, to abandon everything and everyone, and the man, not wanting to let go of his family, felt unbearable pain from the thought of separation, which could not be avoided just like that. The girls grew up without a father, and this loss left a deep mark on their hearts. But they learned to live without him, relying on each other and building their lives full of joy and hope, even without the presence of a loved one. Constantine bitterly said that he had sworn an oath to the phoenix to convince everyone that Carlotta was his true mate. But in the end, his beloved herself did not believe it. The words only increased his own feelings of hopelessness and loss. Unable to justify herself, the woman looked away, feeling a heavy feeling of guilt and despair growing in her chest, realizing that words could not fix the situation and restore the trust that had been lost. The aristocrat had enough of quarrels and separations. He simply wanted to stay close to his wife, striving to restore harmony in their relationship and bring back those happy moments they once shared. The lady stood up from her seat and, slightly bowing her head, apologized, but she had no intention of changing her decision, remaining firm in her intentions and convictions, despite the persistent persuasion of those around her. The man considered his beloved's behavior arrogant and cold, and deep down he was even ready to accept pity with his Tara, if only she would turn to face him again and admit that their relationship deserved a second chance. The girl's forehead furrowed at these words, because he knew how ashamed and awkward she had been then, and his reminder of that moment only increased the internal tension, making her heart beat faster from the surge of emotions. Her hands clenched into fists, reflecting the internal struggle and growing tension, as if she was trying to suppress the storm of feelings that had stirred in her soul from these painful memories. Coming closer to his beloved, the handsome man rudely asked if she had been ashamed then, she had the right to behave so arrogantly and hypocritically now, emphasizing that such behavior did not correspond to a woman's own feelings. Disappointed, the lady replied that she did not understand how she could have lasted so long with such a scoundrel as he. Harsh words cut the air, full of reproach and pain, as if finally putting an end to their complicated relationship. The nobleman insistently urged the girl to be honest and admit that she simply wanted to run away from her worst sin in life, from him, emphasizing that such a decision would not make her stronger, but would only aggravate her internal contradictions and suffering. The man said angrily that his wife simply felt ashamed of her late father for loving a scoundrel like him. The words were laced with rage, as if he was trying to destroy the last drops of respect. An oppressive silence hung between the loving couple, as if an invisible barrier separated them, filling the air with the weight of unspoken words and emotions, leaving them uncertain about what would happen next. Carlotta bowed her head and asked if her husband really thought he knew her better than she knew herself, and there was confusion and bitterness in her voice, as if she was looking for confirmation of her own feelings and the truth in their relationship. After Constantine insistently suggested that everyone gathered together go to the capital, heated discussions arose about the appropriateness and importance of this trip for the further events and plans of the group. When they return, the girls will be officially included in the Duke's lineage, which will be a significant event for their family and will have a positive impact on their status in society, opening up new horizons and opportunities in the future. Surprised, the woman stopped at her interlocutor, asking him whether her title would be restored, since this decision could significantly affect her position in society and the future of her family. The aristocrat muttered with a smile that stripping the princess of her title made no sense, since she was still who she had always been, despite external circumstances. Their children, playing happily and carefree on the bright street, had a full and indisputable right to inherit the titles of their parents, since this was a natural continuation of their noble lineage and an important part of centuries-old traditions. The man was ready to do anything to protect his family from disasters and misfortunes, even to swear again to the phoenix, a symbol of rebirth and hope, to protect his loved ones from any threats and ensure them a peaceful future. Standing on the balcony of his luxurious mansion, the nobleman, with full emotion in his voice, made a plea to his wife, asking her to return to him again to restore what they had lost and to revive their once sincere feelings. The beauty, with a slight sadness in her eyes, asked her husband for time to think, to consider her feelings and decide how best to act in the current situation, trying to find the right solution for their relationship. Ultimately, she decided to stay in her lover's house, realizing that this also provided the daughters with a unique opportunity to get to know their father better, strengthen their bond with him, and create strong family ties that could become the basis for their common future. Standing in front of his wife and fearing that he might do something wrong, he asked her with trepidation to teach him how to be the best father in the world, knowing that it was a huge responsibility and hoping for support and wisdom. He was interested to know what the girls liked, what made them laugh so sweetly and play so merrily, because he wanted to create an atmosphere of happiness and joy for them, full of magic and amazing moments. A light wind blew, and Claire's hair was tousled, as if fluttering in the air. She raised her head up to look at the balcony, where dreams and hopes seemed to be hidden, filling her heart with a slight tremor. From this angle, the parents were not visible. They were hidden by a high-rise building, and in the foreground only a cold stone wall could be seen, creating a feeling of impenetrability and distance from what was once close and dear. However, she managed to overhear how coldly her parents communicated with each other. Their conversations were full of distance and alienation, which caused anxiety and sadness in her heart, making her think about how much their relationship had changed. The little girl thought about interrupting their conversation with Esiel, hoping that such an intervention would help resolve the situation. However, the adults were able to resolve the conflict themselves, demonstrating wisdom and understanding. Suddenly, the twin with the wreath on her head stopped and asked where her parents were. Her voice sounded slightly wary, as if she felt that something was wrong and was looking in the eyes of those around her for comfort and answers to her unspoken questions. Claire pointed her finger upward and explained that they were still talking, her tone full of confidence and her eyes shining with hope that perhaps they would soon sort out their problems and return to them with smiles on their faces. At this time, Carlotta, comfortably settled on the furniture, explained that Esiel was a completely ordinary child with no magical abilities. When the conversation turned to Claire, the woman hesitated, since the situation with her was far from simple and required a special and careful approach to avoid possible misunderstandings. It turned out that the little girl had a huge passion for reading books and spent every free moment immersed in magical worlds created by the author's words, which gave her joy and inspiration. Having had some time to think, she added that the books that should be in the girl's environment should not only captivate her, but also give her knowledge, while others might seem uninteresting and boring. Claire naively believed that she could easily pretend to be innocent in front of her mother, but all her efforts were futile and unsuccessful, and soon the truth finally came to the surface. The girl suddenly flinched when her sister persistently asked her what exactly their parents had talked about, because she had not expected such a frank question at such an inopportune moment. Claire said that the mother and father spoke of how much they loved their children, emphasizing that their care and attention never faded, even in the most difficult times when they faced various difficulties. Esiel smiled happily as she talked about how much she loved her little sister, with whom she shared the brightest and warmest memories, filled with joy and laughter. After which, remembering how she loved her little sister, she reminded that in response, Claire should also say how much she loved her favorite luxurious rose, which always delighted them both with its bright color and wonderful aroma. However, Claire, a little embarrassed, objected because she could not express her feelings so simply and openly, fearing that such words would not be able to convey the full depth of affection and love for her little sister. Esiel laughed merrily at such a sweet reaction, and was ready to say everything for her twin herself, knowing how difficult it is for her to open up and share her feelings with the world around her. Their hands intertwined like tree branches reaching for the light, creating a feeling of warmth and understanding between them that filled their hearts with joy and confidence that they would always be there for each other. The little girl demanded a promise from Claire that she would definitely confess her love to her chosen one, because she knew how important it was to open up your feelings and not be afraid to show true sincerity in a relationship. The little lady was silent for a moment, and then, collecting her thoughts, she swore that she would definitely tell her chosen one about her feelings, because she understood how important it was to be sincere and open in love. Suddenly, Esiel screamed joyfully, calling her parents, and, full of enthusiasm, invited them to come down to them to share this exciting moment and enjoy the company of the whole family. Without thinking twice, the little girl, with genuine joy on her face, rushed towards her parents, like a gusty wind, full of delight and impatience. She wanted to share with them everything that had happened and tell them about her emotions. The mother leaned over to the girl and with a gentle smile asked if she had had a good time, sincerely interested in her impressions and experiences during a day filled with joy and discoveries. Claire, watching her family from the side, had mixed feelings and did not know how to react to this touching scene. She felt a little uncomfortable, not understanding how to fit into the atmosphere of joy and warmth that reigned around. Suddenly, the Duke, sensing a change in the atmosphere, turned his attention to his second daughter, examining the girl with deep interest and attention, as if he were looking for a reflection of his hopes and dreams in her large eyes. He looked happily into her eyes, and her eyes narrowed slightly with joy, radiating light and warmth, as if reflecting all those pleasant emotions that filled her heart at this exciting moment. The whole family was finally united, and now they walked together as if they were one. Dear Claire, not left without attention, became an integral part of this happy moment. The father happily began to present them with bright and colorful toys, each of which was decorated with amazing details and funny elements. Generosity not only made the children happy, but also created a festive atmosphere. The maids were struggling to cope with the task, trying to bring them everything they needed: a huge teddy bear that inspired admiration, and many boxes full of amazing toys and pleasant surprises. With a silent, amazed look, Claire carefully examined the mountains of gifts and offerings that her father had generously prepared for her. Her eyes shone with joy and delight, reflecting genuine emotions. Esiel, with her arms spread wide, stood nearby in complete shock, not believing her eyes. The many gifts and offerings gathered around seemed to her like something magical, like something out of a fairy tale. The man not only gave them beautiful things, but also generously gave them his time, completely immersing himself in an atmosphere of happiness and fun. He happily played with the children, listened to their stories, and answered their questions. Of course, he gave their mother time to think, so that she could decide whether to stay with him or leave. The handsome man understood that such a decision required deep evaluation and inner peace, and therefore did not rush to conclusions. The little girl herself was sure that the Duke had more important things to do than play with them. She looked at him with a slight sadness, realizing that his attention was probably spent on worries and matters that required his intervention. However, he spent hours watching Eziel draw with bright crayons, sitting next to them, admiring her passion and the amazing images she created that filled the world around her with color and joy. Throughout the week, the aristocrat remained in the palace, showing his sincere readiness to become not only a good father for them, but also a real father who cares for his children. Claire covered her face with a book, not being prepared for such a caring father to appear in her life, who showed so much attention and love, causing her joy and confusion at the same time. The twin, unlike her sister, quickly accepted the new parent, experiencing joy and delight from his attention and care. Her heart was filled with happiness, and she happily sought out moments to spend time with him. The girl politely asked her dad to give her the red flower, her voice sounding gentle and trusting, as if she sincerely hoped that this small gesture would be the beginning of a special moment between them. Claire slowly turned the old woman over, not understanding how she could so quickly call a stranger her father, feeling mixed feelings within herself, from confusion to slight distrust of this new and unexpected turn in life. The Duke himself did not impose himself as a father on another daughter, remaining ready to wait as long as she needed to accept him and get used to a new world for her, filled with care and attention. Moreover, communication with his children really made the aristocrat happy, filling his life with joy and meaning, and their every laughter and smile became a source of inspiration and satisfaction for him. Claire and her mother with the same kind gaze, as if trying to convey to them all his sincere care and warmth that emanated from his heart, creating an atmosphere of trust and love in their family. The same eyes as the girls reflected the face of the daughter, and they really were very similar to each other, which created a feeling of deep family connection and familial love, despite all the changes in their lives. The nobleman politely asked if he needed to bring anything for Claire, to which she declined, thanking him sincerely for his offer and attention, feeling a little embarrassed by his excessive concern. Embarrassed, with a bright red face, she covered herself with a book, as if hiding from the curious glances of those around her, and in response to her embarrassment, she felt someone smile warmly, instilling in her confidence and calm. When the little girl became interested in reading, he happily brought her even more books, trying to give her the opportunity to immerse herself in amazing worlds and exciting stories. Eziel, on the other hand, bought the man more dolls that the little girl with blonde hair loved so much, hoping that this would bring her joy and make her happy. The father, of course, was ready to do anything for the sake of his beloved children, happily responding to any of their requests and striving to make their lives brighter and more fulfilling, giving each day special meaning. Suddenly, a sharp noise was heard, breaking the silence, and the door unexpectedly swung open, revealing a mysterious space full of intriguing shadows and mysteries, ready to reveal themselves to those who dare to enter. Carlotta could not help but notice the efforts of her husband, who tried his best to integrate into the new team, showing perseverance and enthusiasm in every step. Their attention instantly switched to the woman, and all the participants immediately stopped, stopping the game, as if someone had pressed pause at the most interesting moment. Carlotta, with a kind smile on her face, invited all her friends to a cozy tea party in the garden, where flowering plants filled the air with the scent of spring. And just a week later, Mother made her final decision. A small family of parents and their children walked happily along the road, along which colorful plants grew, filling the air with the aroma of freshness and joy, as if emphasizing their happy moments together. Eziel joyfully pointed her finger into the distance, curiously asking her father if she and her sister could play as happily and carefree as other children did, enjoying every minute of their childhood. Constantine could not refuse, and with a slight smile on his face, he politely confirmed his consent, realizing that this decision would bring joy and satisfaction to everyone around him. The girl grabbed her friend's hand tightly and ran, unable to contain her joy, while Claire only managed to take one last look at her parents, full of love and support, before they disappeared from her sight. Carlotta tilted her head and noted with pleasure how close he had become to his daughters, watching their joyful games and cheerful laughter that filled the atmosphere with warmth and happiness. The man was sure that he still knew too little about them and was eager to learn even more, but his wife, upon hearing this, only laughed, hinting that some secrets were better left undisclosed so as not to destroy the magic of their relationship. Suddenly the man stopped, hearing a joke about how his legs were probably already burning from the speed, and smiling thought about how sometimes funny words can make us stop and rethink our actions, giving a moment of lightness. He slowed his pace to watch his wife from behind and thought about how she felt in her new home, where every room held the anticipation of new memories and cozy moments. The little girls looked at the bright flower from the garden with great interest, admiring its beautiful petals and rich aroma, as if discovering a new amazing detail of nature. The husband waited for his beloved's answer, standing next to her and looking at her attentively, his heart filled with expectation and hope, because he knew that her every word had a special meaning for him. The fountain made a soft noise in the background, hiding the couple from prying eyes, when the girl, after a slight hesitation, agreed to go to the capital with the Duke, but only on one important condition, which she immediately voiced without taking her eyes off him. The lady quietly agreed to stay for only a year, defining this period as the necessary limit during which she was ready to experience a new life while maintaining a sense of control and confidence in her decisions. The adults sat in a cozy gazebo, enjoying a leisurely tea party. The aroma of freshly brewed tea enveloped the space, and quiet conversations complemented this perfect moment of peace and tranquility, emphasizing the harmony of the moment. The lady sat with a cup of tea, her eyes closed, enjoying every sip. Opposite her, her husband watched with a slight smile, and behind him were beautiful trees which, swaying in the wind, added a fairy tale atmosphere to the surroundings. The cup returned gently to its saucer when the question was asked why she had decided to stay for only 1 year. There was a slight pause in the air, as if the question required special attention and a frank answer. With cool reserve, the lady explained that this was more than enough time to ask forgiveness and hear it out, without prolonging the uncertainty that weighed on them both. The man froze in surprise when he heard his lover's revelation that the pain she had caused had affected more than just him. Such a confession shocked him, revealing the depth of her regrets and forcing him to rethink their shared past. Her fingers began to slowly slide along the rim of the cup, in which the drink was quietly splashing, as if the maiden was trying to find comfort in this simple movement, thinking over each word and preparing for what was to be said. Carlotta calmly explained that her desire to return was dictated by her desire to ask forgiveness from other people, regardless of whether they accepted her apology or rejected it. The lady began to list the names of people to whom she considered it her duty to apologize. There were so many of them that the list seemed endless, where each person in life left a deep mark that required sincere repentance and recognition of mistakes. Gritting his teeth with tension, the Duke growled that these people had no right to appear before her again, his voice full of anger and resentment, trying to protect his beloved from the ghosts of the past. The girl, agreeing with her husband, acknowledged that she was not innocent in this situation, realizing that her own actions also played an important role in the circumstances. Therefore, the beauty made a conscious decision to dedicate the coming year to forgiving everyone who had ever hurt her and to become forgiven, striving for peace in her soul, because the lady understood that forgiveness is the key to her own healing. With her finger on her lips, the lady insistently asked her husband not to say anything against her decision, and also to forgive him for all his bad deeds. Forgiveness was also the first step to restoring their relationship and starting a new chapter. What was surprising was that all she demanded from him in return was to take care of his daughters, as if she realized that it was this responsibility that would help strengthen their family and give them the opportunity to move forward, despite all the previous grievances and misunderstandings. Looking down at her reflection in her teacup, Carlotta added that she didn't want to return to the capital, but was ready to do so for him, realizing that for the sake of love, it was worth sacrificing one's own desires and comfort. Looking up at her lover, she said with confidence and determination that someday she would still have to answer for her sins, and this thought did not leave her, tormenting her soul and causing anxiety. The lady smiled and confidently said that she admitted that she was selfish, but despite this she would definitely stay with her husband, not paying the slightest attention to those who opposed this decision and tried to change the lady's choice. The man opened his mouth, but struck by such a frank truth, he did not know what to say in response, feeling how his thoughts were confused and his feelings mixed in a stream of uncertainty. The plans of the most charming beauty, who sat on the chair with effortless grace, were to hand over the care of the girls to her husband, relying on his strength and support in this important matter. Having answered briefly, Constantine said with understanding that he was fully aware of his wife's feelings and was ready to come to her aid, while the warm wind gently played with the leaves, creating a wonderful picture in the cozy gazebo, filled with their quiet conversations. The garden was filled with beautiful, bright scarlet roses, their petals shimmering in the sunlight, creating a delightful sight that filled the air with a sweet scent and attracted the attention of passers-by. Esiel couldn't take her eyes off the beautiful scarlet roses that seemed to beckon her, and a tender desire to give them to her mother matured in her heart to brighten her day and fill her with great joy. Claire, who was sitting next to her, was ready to take the blame if they were scolded for picking the flowers, because she did not want Esiel to feel remorse for this innocent act, which, in her opinion, was quite justified. The sister did not like this idea, and she persistently asked Claire not to do it, explaining that she should not take all the blame on herself because they were both guilty of this act, and it would be more correct to share the responsibility. Esiel's fingers gently wrapped around the stem of the flower, and although her friend did not cry, she knew that there were feelings raging inside her sister that could not go unnoticed, like a hidden storm in a calm sea. The girl froze in surprise at these words. Her heart began to beat faster, and the beauty did not know what to say in response, feeling how excitement and confusion overwhelmed her, like waves rolling onto the shore. At this, the sister only burst out laughing and smiling, said that their relative never liked to see Esiel's tears, as well as Claire's manifestations of displeasure, and this always made the little girl feel awkward. Their hands touched and their fingers intertwined gently, creating a feeling of warmth and closeness, as if they were seeking support from each other in this touching moment. Holding a flower in her hand, the girl joyfully shouted to her relative to hurry up and go to her parents, because she couldn't wait to show them her beautiful gift and share this happy moment. With a slight, almost imperceptible smile on her lips, Claire closed her eyes and quietly agreed, as if wishing to prolong this moment of harmony and silence, enjoying the feeling of calm and inner warmth. Together, the ladies ran swiftly up the steps that lined the winding path, their laughter filling the air like the wind, their light steps filling the space around them with carefreeness. Water flowed from the fountains, refreshing the air around with its cool splashes, filling the garden with pleasant moisture, which gave coolness and liveliness to everything around, thereby enlivening this quiet corner of nature. Having risen from the table, the parents began to get ready when Constantine, in a confident voice, announced the emperor's desire to meet with the once missing princess, causing mixed feelings of excitement and anticipation in their hearts. Constantine added that when the boy was on the run, he used a pseudonym to hide his true identity and avoid prosecution, which testified to his caution and ability to adapt. The cup began to fall, and at the same moment, hot tea gushed out of it, splashes flying in different directions, creating small, sparkling drops that froze in the air, as if in slow motion. The daughters stopped next to their mother, not having time to say a word, only looking at her with anticipation and anxiety in their eyes, as if trying to find in her gaze the answer to the questions that filled their hearts at that moment. Constantine anxiously grabbed his wife by the arms, preventing her from falling when she was surprised by the emperor's pseudonym. His heart was pounding with anxiety, because he knew how important it was to support her at that moment. The lady said sadly and disconsolately that she would be thrown into prison immediately for having previously dared to insult the ruler, and there was deep sadness in her voice. She understood that the consequences of her actions could be too severe. Esiel asked with a wide smile who this mysterious royal character was, her eyes shining with curiosity and anticipation as she was curious to learn about the secrets hidden behind the title and name of the emperor. The parents began to comfort their daughter, hugging her tenderly and whispering words of encouragement, while Claire stood to the side, watching the scene, Feeling mixed emotions, not knowing what to do, the little girl's attention was drawn to a scarlet flower that bloomed luxuriously on the grass as she rushed forward. The bright color seemed to beckon, causing a desire to stop and enjoy its beauty in this fleeting moment. With the help of magic, she lifted the plant into her hand, feeling its delicate leaves touch her skin, and in that moment, she realized that she would spend a whole year with her father, preparing for the adventures and discoveries that awaited them ahead. The little lady raised the rose to the sky, and the wind itself carried the plant upward. Closing her eyes, she made a wish for the coming year to pass calmly and peacefully, filled with happy moments and carefree smiles. The capital of the empire shone with its beauty, and rich buildings, decorated with exquisite ornaments and high columns, towered over the streets, creating a majestic cityscape. They left their old home behind with their mother, their hearts filled with nostalgia, as many memories were kept within those walls, but a new adventure and the opportunity to start over awaited them. The hand extended a bottle of liquid, in which bright colors played, as if painting the world around, and at that moment everything around was filled with anticipation. Kneeling down in front of her daughter, Carlotta asked with a gentle smile if it was okay to use the potion during bath time, her eyes shining with anticipation, knowing that it could make their time together even more magical and memorable. With her eyebrows knitted together and a look of disbelief, the woman said that this elixir, on the contrary, was capable of returning the baby to her previous hair color, as if restoring lost memories of a carefree childhood. Standing opposite, the woman said with a slight smile that her daughter's beautiful eyes and snow-white hair represented the symbol of their family's power, like an invisible thread connecting them to ancient traditions and heritage. Claire stared at the potion in amazement, unable to believe her eyes, as if a mysterious secret she had never heard of before was being revealed to her. Grabbing the girl by the shoulders, Carlotta firmly tried to convince her that this is how all children strive to make friends, promising her exciting adventures and games together. Having fixed her hair, she added with a smile that it was high time for the little girl to find a true friend who would become not only a reliable support, but also a faithful companion in exciting adventures full of joy and discovery. The lady continued, saying with a slight smile that Claire could now do whatever she wanted, exploring the vast expanses of the capital, filled with opportunities and mysteries. Her hand tightly gripped her daughter's dark hair, assuring her that now other people would respect not only the girl, but also her status, which she proudly carried as a symbol of strength and dignity. Looking down and rubbing the hem of her clothes with her finger, the little girl quietly muttered that she didn't want to be friends with someone just because of power, preferring sincere relationships based on real feelings, trust, and mutual understanding. Mother hastened to calm her down, explaining that it was not worth being friends with such bad people. It was better to look for reliable and loyal friends who could really support her in difficult times. Their clan was very large and consisted of respected and worthy people whose reputation, based on the principles of honesty and justice, inspired admiration and trust among all those around them. Therefore, the lady came to the conclusion that such friendship would exist not only between specific people, but also between their families, uniting them into a close circle of trust and mutual assistance. But Claire liked to remain invisible with her black hair, which did not stand out from the crowd, especially during those troubled times when they were on the run. The dark hair blended into the shadows, which gave a sense of security. As she held the potion in her hand, she also realized that they needed to impress the aristocrats in the capital. This potion could be the key to opening up new opportunities. The floor was covered in streaks of dark water, tinted black, creating an ominous sight and leaving a feeling of anxiety and tension, as if something irreversible had happened here. The maid, with a slight smile on her face, brought a neatly folded towel to her mistress, carefully wrapping it in a soft fabric material so that she could enjoy the comfort and coziness of her personal space. Now Claire could walk around with silver hair like her father, proudly showing off this unique feature, which made her even more beautiful and incredible, attracting admiring glances from others and filling her heart with self-confidence. The girl froze at the sink, where old dishes stood, and carefully examined the shiny drops of water reflecting the light like little stars. After she had taken a good look at her new appearance, she headed out into the corridors, followed by the servants, who were curiously discussing the unexpected changes. Suddenly, her father appeared in front of her, affectionately calling his daughter by name, warmly greeting her with a wide smile on his face and light in his eyes, filling the atmosphere with tenderness and joy. The little girl froze in front of him, her mouth open in surprise, and then, collecting her thoughts, answered with a childish spontaneity and sincerity that always touched his heart. Suddenly, a man came up to them, deftly grabbed his child in his arms, and lifted him high up, making the little girl feel overjoyed and surprised, as if she had soared into the sky on the wings of happiness. With his hand, he gently tucked away the strands of hair that had accidentally fallen onto her face, and, smiling, looked into her eyes with admiration, thus wanting to express all his love and care with just one movement. The man ordered the servants to leave immediately, as he himself was going to carry his daughter to the room, deciding that it would be best to spend this time alone with her to discuss important things and give her some attention and care. The mansion was so huge that one could get lost in its tangled corridors even at night, and the many windows, illuminated by dim light, created a mysterious atmosphere, as if the walls themselves kept many secrets and stories. The Duke carried the baby with ease in one hand, confidently walking down the corridor as if she weighed nothing. Her cheerful look gave strength and inspiration, filling the space with light. With a gentle smile, the man admitted that he always wanted to be close to children from the moment they were born and see them grow and develop, enjoying every moment of their carefree childhood, full of joy and discoveries. With her head down, the girl sadly admitted that her dear mother had often been sad because of her before, and, remembering those moments, she felt how hard it was for her to realize that she could upset the one who loved her so much. These words made the man laugh, smiling and dreaming that the girl would call him Dad, because his heart was filled with warmth from the thought of how he could become not only a protector for her, but also a close person. Clutching a lock of her hair, Claire explained that her mother had been brewing a potion to wash the dye out of her hair, confident that it would help restore her natural color and make her even more beautiful than she had been as a child. Constantine, looking at his daughter, noted with admiration how her snow-white hair, shining in the light, shimmered with a silky shine like precious threads, emphasizing all her natural beauty. The embarrassed little girl, blushing from the gentle compliment, carefully looked away and froze in silence, and her innocence and shyness gave a special charm to this touching and exciting moment. After some thought, Claire admitted that it was strange for her to realize her future role as heir, and that she felt like the time had come to prove to everyone who she really was, despite the doubts of those around her. Constantine slowed his pace, noticing how his daughter was lost in her thoughts and looked upset. He stopped, looking at her carefully, realizing that something was bothering the child, but giving her time to express her feelings herself. After a short pause, Constantine asked in a cold voice if the little girl really did not want to become his heir, looking into her face with an inscrutable expression, as if trying to understand her true intentions. However, despite the cold words, the man's gaze remained calm and even tender, directed at the child in his arms, as if all his severity dissolved in this one moment of closeness. The maiden looked away, lost in her thoughts, realizing that being an heir was no easy task, requiring diligence and a willingness to relearn many things she had never had to deal with before. Claire, about her new destiny, she did not know how to feel, full of fears and worries, because an unknown path was opening up before her, which made her uneasy about the future. The little girl opened her beautiful eyes in surprise, hearing words of comfort from her father, which filled her heart with warmth, and the gentle touch of a strong hand gave her confidence that everything would be fine. Constantine, with a confident smile on his face, convinced her that it did not matter how she acted in her new role, because he would make every effort to ensure that everything ended in the best possible way, ensuring safety. The man was ready to do anything for his daughter, and his gentle smile perfectly reflected the boundless love and devotion that the handsome man felt for her, because she was the most precious and important person in his life. The Duke continued on his way, clutching his precious child tighter to his chest, as if thus protecting him from all the troubles and worries that might come their way. Suddenly, the curious little girl, sincerely wanting to understand what would happen if she accidentally made a mistake, asked her friend about the possible consequences of her mistakes and how she could correct them so as not to be upset about it. The candles burned softly, gently illuminating the dark corridors, creating an atmosphere of coziness and mystery, as if inviting travelers to uncover the secrets hidden in their shadows. Constantine replied that he knew that the girl would never make a mistake on purpose, because she was kind and caring, and always worried about her parents just as they worried about her. Continuing affectionately, he said that if such a situation did occur, the girl would definitely have some important reason for it, and he would be ready to support and understand her. Sleepily closing her eyes, Claire pressed herself closer to her dad, feeling his reliable warmth and care, rejoicing at such a wonderful gift from the May fairy, which filled her heart with boundless joy and happiness. Often plunging into the world of her dreams, the little girl imagined herself at the age of 6 or 7, dressed in a beautiful and cute dress that emphasized her innocence and childish joy. The parents stood nearby, discussing something important and interesting, laughing merrily and exchanging jokes from time to time, creating an atmosphere of joy and comfort around. Without a moment's hesitation, the girl, full of hope and a desire for love, extended her little hands to her father, just as her mother once did, so that he could hug her and give her a feeling of care, warmth, and unconditional love. In my dreams, my father always took good care of me, not only brushing my hair, but also giving me genuine attention, which gave me a feeling of warmth and security. With surprise, Constantine turned his gaze to his daughter, hearing how she tenderly and impatiently called his name, causing pleasant sensations in his heart. With her eyes closed, Claire quietly explained to him that in her sleep he had tenderly combed her white hair, and this care had been a real source of happiness and peace for her, immersing her in a world of pleasant memories. With tenderness and care, the man gently placed his hand on the blanket to cover his daughter, as if protecting her from the cold night wind and creating an atmosphere of warmth and safety for her, where she could sleep peacefully. Without thinking twice, Constantine called the servants and confidently gave the order to bring a comb, wanting to tidy up his daughter's hair and return it to a neat appearance that matched her strict appearance and status. With his hand, he carefully adjusted the baby's hair so that it would not interfere with her sleep, carefully removing strands from her face and creating comfortable conditions for sweet sleep. Claire herself was happy to sleep a little more and bask in the warm comfort of the bed, enjoying the silence that enveloped her like a soft blanket, allowing her to forget about all her worries and simply enjoy a moment of sweet rest. A new day began, filled with light and hope, as the sun slowly rose above the horizon, illuminating the world with its warm rays, and the bright colors of nature gradually came to life, creating a picturesque landscape that was pleasing to the eye. The mother was slightly displeased that one of the daughters was still sleeping, despite the fact that the sun had long since risen, filling the room with light and creating a cozy atmosphere, while the rest of the family had already started the day, filling with energy. She turned to her husband with annoyance, folding her arms across her chest and giving him a displeased look, while he apparently could not say anything in response, only shrugging his shoulders and showing complete incomprehension of what was happening. All he could do in this difficult situation was look away, lost in his thoughts, while the woman scolded him with slight irritation, her words filled with reproaches sounding like a melody that he did not want to hear. As an argument, Carlotta brought up her other daughter, whom she woke up despite her reluctance to get up, since the baby, although not eager to leave her cozy bed, was clearly active and ready to start a new day. The mother's hands carefully lay on the blanket, trying to wake up the sleeping girl so that the snow-white hair scattered across the pillow would not get crumpled or tangled, and the little girl herself could get up in a good mood, ready to meet a new day. When the little girl finally opened her eyes, she saw her parents and many servants standing behind her, watching her carefully with smiles on their faces and waiting for a new order from their masters. The girl felt surprised and awkward as she pulled the blanket over herself, as if she suddenly realized that she was the center of attention, and embarrassed by the gaze of her parents and servants, she tried to hide her embarrassed cheeks behind the soft material. The servants only waited for new instructions from their masters, ready to immediately carry out their orders, listening carefully to every word and carefully ensuring that all the needs of the family were met. Claire blushed brightly, realizing that she had been talking in her sleep, and her cheeks flushed with shame like blooming roses when she remembered what she had actually discussed with her parents and the servants. Soon they arrived at the Empire, a capital that was striking in its splendor and architectural luxury, where majestic buildings decorated with exquisite elements reflected the wealth and power of this place. Evan, crossing his legs and sitting majestically on the throne, asked the servants with interest if anyone knew when the Duke and his family would arrive, his voice sounding confident and authoritative, as befits a true representative of a noble family. A slight smile appeared on the Emperor's face, and he was clearly intrigued by the upcoming meeting, his eyes shining with curiosity and anticipation, as if he was anticipating something important and interesting. The journey to the palace was long and took many hours, winding through picturesque landscapes where mountains gave way to green valleys, and the sun gradually sank below the horizon, creating mesmerizing sunset pictures. However, thanks to his father's abilities, the journey took only a week, because his ability to find the fastest routes, as well as connections with local residents, allowed him to avoid difficulties and delays, making the journey more efficient. Holding a comb in his hands, the man explained that he used a magical gate to quickly travel, allowing himself to shorten the travel time and instantly appear at the desired location using magic. Surprised, Esiel asked about the side effects of such transitions, her eyes filled with curiosity and concern. Any use of magic could have its consequences, and she wanted to understand what risks might be hidden. At this time, the man stood nearby, tenderly and attentively combing his second daughter's hair, trying to make this moment truly special and memorable for both of them. Constantine closed his eyes, trying to concentrate, and explained that magical gates can bring real pain and suffering to ordinary people, revealing dark horizons that are hidden from their invisible eyes. Soon the coachman arrived, a man sitting on a horse's saddle, waiting alone for his owners, ready to fulfill his duties and take them on a new adventure full of unexpected events and impressions. Luckily, the girls passed through the magical gates without any problems, and the little girl with blonde hair, full of pride, happily told her dad about it, sharing her impressions and feeling of surprise from what happened. The father's power was truly incredible, and everyone around him, realizing his strength and influence, bowed their heads in reverence as a sign of deep respect, ready to fulfill his every will and serve him in any matter. The horse galloped furiously, its hooves striking the ground with a loud clatter. Behind it, the carriage rolled swiftly, following the rapid movement, creating the impression that everything around was dissolving in a whirlwind of speed and energy. Esiel, with a smile on her face, repeated the greeting she was supposed to give to the Emperor, trying to convey all her sincere joy and respect for the distinguished guest, knowing that this moment would be important in her life. Carlotta took care of the little girl and asked her to continue talking about what they were learning to preserve this important moment in their learning together. With a smile on her face, Esiel said that she would indulge Claire, who sat next to her with a completely emotionless expression on her face as if she had not heard a word. Next to the transport, moving slowly along the dusty road, rode guards on strong and muscular horses, who walked confidently as if they felt the importance of their task. Without thinking twice, the mother decided to teach her daughters etiquette at court, right in the carriage, where they could simultaneously enjoy the journey and master the important manners necessary for life in high society. The little girl, shaking her head in confusion, was overwhelmed with the information about manners that her mother was trying so hard to explain, and seemed unable to comprehend how important this knowledge would be in their high society. Constantine tried to calm his wife, assuring her that the Emperor would not be too strict with them, but she had a bad feeling that did not leave her, instilling fear and doubt about the upcoming meeting. The lady covered her face in shame, remembering how terribly she had treated the ruler when he pretended to be one of her knights, and how her carelessness had almost led to serious consequences. Claire, looking out the window and lost in her thoughts, suddenly became interested in her mother's past as a princess, wondering about her life, adventures, and the choices that led to her being in her current role. Suddenly, one hand gently covered the other like a light blanket, trying to calm and support, filling the atmosphere with warmth and understanding in this tense moment. Ishiel, giggling and clutching a stuffed animal, turned to her mother with assurance that everything would be fine and promised that she would indulge Claire as she had before, thus copying the behavior and trying to be supportive. Carlotta smiled, and at that moment, when her lips spread into a gentle smile, the beauty felt how her mood began to improve, filling her heart with lightness and warmth. Finally, they were treated to beautiful views of the capital, where tall towers rose majestically into the sky, creating a captivating cityscape full of history and life. Claire sternly ordered her relative that she needed to learn at least a greeting, emphasizing the importance of good manners and proper behavior in society so as not to expose herself to awkward situations. The mother's face was sad and tense, reflecting all the worries and cares that the maiden was experiencing at this difficult moment. Every wrinkle on her forehead spoke of the heavy thoughts and worries that were haunting her. The man's hand fell carefully on the lady's shoulder, like a soft call for calm, giving her confidence and support when she so needed warm protection. At this time, the little girls enthusiastically repeated the greeting, and Esiel was finally able to remember the words, feeling a surge of joy from the fact that, despite the difficulties, they were coping together and learning something new. The girl did not understand only one thing. Why was it necessary to look at the floor in front of the emperor? Because it seemed to her that looks full of respect and sincerity could express much more than downcast eyes. Claire sternly explained that if she didn't look down, she would have to look up at the ceiling, and in that position her neck would quickly get tired, which would become uncomfortable and unnatural. She tried to convey to the girl the importance of observing etiquette. Esiel crossed her arms in front of her and shook her head vigorously, declaring that she now understood everything, filling herself with confidence in her knowledge of how to behave in society and observe the rules of etiquette. Silently and with smiles on their faces, the parents watched their daughter's conversation, noting how cheerfully and naturally they communicated and how sincerely they showed interest in each other. Suddenly, the coachman stopped the carriage abruptly and shouted that they had arrived at the meeting place, his voice echoing throughout the surrounding area, causing everyone in the carriage to tense up in surprise and anticipation of what lay ahead. The wheels of the carriage creaked and suddenly stopped, causing everyone inside to jump slightly in surprise as the silence around them enveloped them in its peace once again. The maiden's face became unwavering and serious, and she sternly said that she was fine, trying to hide her true feelings behind a mask of confidence and calm, although doubts and worries raged inside her. The first to exit the carriage was Constantine, like a true gentleman, who respectfully opened the door and extended his hand, offering assistance to all passengers, creating an atmosphere of nobility and gallantry inherent in real lords. After which he helped his daughters down, and Claire turned to see what her father was going to do next, feeling a little excited and curious about his next steps in this important meeting. A polite man helped their mother down, offering her his hand in a caring and respectful gesture, which created an atmosphere of warmth and support at that moment. On one of the woman's fingers, a sparkling engagement ring with a precious stone reflects the light and attracts attention, symbolizing love and fidelity despite all trials. Constantine froze in cold and shock when he saw the decoration on his beloved's hand. His heart sank in surprise, and thoughts began to spin in his head about what this could mean for their relationship and how it would change everything. Suddenly, he changed his movement, quickly catching the lady so that she wouldn't fall. The man's hand touched the woman's shoulder confidently, and he felt the tension ease a little. Having gently twirled his beloved in a dance, Constantine held the beauty tightly to himself, enjoying the moment and feeling how their hearts beat in unison, creating a picture of romance and closeness, full of tenderness and mutual understanding. The girl's cheeks turned red and her mouth opened in surprise as she realized the unexpectedness and beauty of the moment, filling her body with delight, making her feel as if she were in a fairy tale. Claire also froze in place, not believing her eyes, as a scene opened up before her that seemed completely unreal and fantastic, as if it had come straight from a movie screen. Constantine smiled, but his smile concealed a barely noticeable hint of depression, as if behind the external calm there lurked a shadow of anxiety and discontent, which made his gaze seem deeper and more multi-layered. They finally arrived in the capital, which, unfortunately, turned out to be not just a place, but a real abyss, the depths of hell itself, filled with dark secrets and dangers hidden behind the facades of magnificent buildings. Turning away, the girl decided to continue on her way, determined to catch up with her sister, who seemed to be slipping further and further into a mysterious world full of adventures and unexpected encounters. Although the palace shone with luxury, its splendor was repulsive, creating a feeling of coldness and soullessness, as if a dark secret was hidden behind the shiny walls. Evan met the Duke's family in a castle that seemed far from homely. The grand halls and cold walls created an atmosphere of formality and alienation, distancing the guests from a sense of comfort and warmth. Smiling, the handsome man greeted them with a nod of his head, reminiscent of his mother's movements in their tenderness and grace, as if he was not simply greeting the guests but was genuinely happy about their arrival. The Emperor laughed loudly during his conversation with the Duke, while Carlotta shyly covered her face, trying to hide her awkwardness and confusion caused by this relaxed atmosphere. Claire, standing to the side, thought that she and Dad were probably friends because their conversations and laughter sounded so casual and warm, as if there was a strong connection between them that she had not previously suspected. The girl made a graceful curtsy before the ruler, who, having taken his place on the throne, radiated grandeur and authority, as if emphasizing the full significance of the moment. Waving his hand, the man noted with a slight grin that it seemed like the grown lady had forgotten her title, as if it was just a small thing in light of the importance of what was happening, causing a stir in the air. In some ways, Evan reminded Claire of a little boy who made fun of adults, playing with their expectations and ideas, making her surprised by his spontaneity and carelessness. When the ruler suddenly stopped laughing, the aristocrat asked him to stop in a restrained tone. Tension hung in the air, giving the moment an unexpected seriousness and causing bewilderment among those gathered. As he glanced at the girls, he couldn't help but notice how much Claire resembled the Duke. There were echoes of family resemblance in her features, giving her a certain mystery and majesty, as if she had inherited some of the nobility. With his hands folded in front of him, the young man began to introduce himself to the daughters of his courtiers with a slight smile, carefully observing their reactions and trying to create a pleasant first impression, full of curiosity. Claire immediately realized that the boy was looking at her with an intent gaze, and the temperature in the room seemed to rise, as if the air around them was filled with invisible excitement and tension. Like a true lady, the little girl politely curtsied, bowing gracefully and attracting the attention of those around her with her charm and sophistication, as if nature itself had breathed grace into her. The girl was frightened by the Emperor's evil smile, which shone piercingly on his face as if foreshadowing trouble, and it seemed that it was squeezing her heart in an icy vice. The little girl, bowing her head in respect, answered the ruler that she possessed an unusual and rare art of wind magic. The beauty also used her abilities to achieve her goal. The man, wanting to personally verify the truth of her words, with slight insistence asked the girl to follow him to demonstrate her magical abilities in practice. Constantine, deeply concerned about the situation, was about to stop the emperor, but the latter, possessing impressive authority, remained adamant in his decision, and no words could shake his will. With an oath uttered with full intent, he bound the hero in place, and at the same moment mysterious seals appeared around him, causing the handsome man to freeze, unable to move, as if a magical force held him in iron shackles. Chains suddenly appeared in the air and quickly surrounded the aristocrat, binding him, covering his mouth and restricting the movements of his strong body. The magical force forced the nobleman to freeze in silence. The little girl froze in place in horror, her beautiful eyes widened in fear, filled with anxiety for her father's fate, and her heart began to beat faster, reflecting deep concern for his safety. The legs were also wrapped in chains that restricted all movement. This was the sin that Constantine committed for the sake of their mother, forcing him to suffer the consequences of his decisions and choose between love and duty. Noticing that Claire had quickly approached him, the emperor said with a gentle smile that she was a good girl, thereby emphasizing his concern for her and admiration for her courage and devotion. The mother's face was distorted with horror when the ruler, turning to her, spoke of his desire to have a personal conversation with her daughter, causing her real anxiety and fear for Claire's future. While Carlotta was trembling with fear, the little girl, despite her excitement, obediently followed the representative of royal blood, full of uncertainty, but eager to find out what awaited her ahead. The guards, acting quickly and decisively, seized Aziel when she, filled with anxiety and determination, was about to rush after her relative, not wanting to remain on the sidelines. She could well be in danger. Without waiting a moment, Claire used her magical abilities to push away the guards who were harming her sister, burning in her heart the determination to protect her loved one at any cost. The girl, sobbing from fear and despair, threw herself into her mother's arms, begging her for protection and hoping that Claire would not cause her more pain or upset her with her cruel and ruthless behavior, which left deep wounds in her soul. The emperor was greatly impressed by the amazing abilities of the duke's daughter, who, despite her young age, was so skilled in magic that it aroused genuine admiration and respect. The guards, sitting on the floor, could not contain their groans of pain and, holding their heads in their hands, tried to ease the suffering that overcame them from the cruel and unexpected injuries. Aziel screamed loudly, full of despair and anger, asking what more Claire wanted from her, since she had already shown her power at the moment, demonstrating all her abilities and readiness to fight. Evan couldn't help but notice how much the little girl reminded him of himself. Her naive and silly behavior brought back warm memories of his childhood and the joy he experienced during those times. After this, he laughed loudly and, hugging Claire with a serious expression on his face, ordered the other little girl not to trust strangers, emphasizing the importance of caution and safety in their world. The girl with snow-white hair had no choice but to accompany the emperor, who was displaying his magical abilities, enveloping everything around him in a magical glow and demonstrating his power. He clearly enjoyed keeping divine power in chains, as if enjoying how strength and power were fettered, subordinated to his will, and a man could control them at his own discretion. Standing still and lost in thought, she asked the emperor how long he had been using such unusual charms, promising that he would believe anyone who spoke the truth, even if it was difficult. Evan, however, did not believe a single word of the maiden, who, speaking of her affairs, did not blush or experience any embarrassment, as if such a deception was absolutely indifferent to her and even seemed to her something natural. No one could protect Claire's family or the poor little girl herself, who silently followed the strange ruler, remaining in the shadow of his mysterious personality and uncertain intentions. If the man really wanted to use his magic, the duke's daughter would hardly be able to resist him, because the guy's strength would be too great for her, and she could find herself helpless before his power. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped and a tense silence hung in the air, as if time had stood still. Everything around seemed calm, but in everyone's heart there was growing anxiety, foreseeing an approaching storm. There in front stood a small boy with blonde hair who, with his hands pressed to his chest, expressed complete confusion. His big eyes sought answers in the faces of adults, and it seemed as if the world around him had fallen apart. He had fair hair and large green eyes that shone with innocence. His face, with its fine features and long eyelashes, showed surprise and concern, giving him the appearance of a tender and vulnerable child. The girl quickly realized that the crown prince stood before her, and a mixture of delight and anxiety ignited in her heart. For the first time she encountered a man who could change the fate of the kingdom, and now she had to decide what to do in this situation. The little boy muttered that he wanted to see the fermata. His quiet and hesitant voice sounded hopeful, as if he was afraid that his words would not be understood, and his heart fluttered with excitement, because meeting the fermata seemed to him something incredible and magical. After this, the boy turned his attention to Claire and asked his father who this girl was. There was curiosity in his voice, and his eyes sparkled with interest, as if he was looking for an answer to something important in her. The sorceress thought, because somehow this boy reminded her of Aziel, with his innocence and sincerity, and in his eyes she saw a reflection of what was once close and dear to her. The light of lost dreams and hopes was kept in him. The prince, however, appeared to be only 7 or 8 years old, and he looked surprisingly small, as if he had just stepped out of a children's fairy tale, with an innocent look and a pure heart, full of hopes and dreams for the future. Politely, the witch bowed her head and, smiling softly, looked at the boy, as if trying to assess his sincerity and innocence before deciding how she should proceed. Kalina, that was the boy's name, literally glowed with happiness. His childish face broke into a wide smile, and his eyes sparkled with joy, as if the boy had found what he had been looking for all his life. Delighted at meeting the gorgeous stranger, he began asking his interlocutor many questions with a blush on his cheeks. His high voice trembled with excitement, and his eyes sparkled with curiosity. Claire, however, could not hold back her tears as she remembered her family, whom the ruthless emperor had caused unbearable pain and suffering, leaving a deep mark that seemed to never heal, causing only bitterness. With a cold smile, the little girl said that she could not call herself the little boy's cousin, but she was ready to become part of his retinue and bring her unique essence into his life, bringing aloof politeness to the conversation. When asked if he wanted to see the fermata, Callan, with his mouth wide open and genuine delight, loudly replied that of course he did. His face was shining with impatience. The emperor, with his inherent power and authority, ordered his son to return to his chambers, explaining that the duke was now busy with important matters that required his full attention and could not be distracted by visitors. The little girl, looking at the man with understanding, replied that she realized that he did not want to show the boy an aristocrat in chains, because this sight could not only spoil the child's innocence, but also cause him fear and bewilderment. At this point, the children, observing palace etiquette, said goodbye to each other, exchanging light bows and kind glances, realizing that a special bond had arisen between them, despite all the circumstances that separated them. Callan walked away slowly, striding forward confidently, accompanied by his guards who, like shadows, protected him, giving him a sense of security and importance despite his young age. The sun brightly illuminated the huge palace. Its magnificent facades sparkled under the rays of light, creating a magical atmosphere in which every stone, every element of architecture came to life, attracting the eye and admiration. Evan walked confidently forward, and Claire followed him, when suddenly the man, turning to her, asked if she knew his name, arousing curiosity and surprise in the girl's eyes, who seemed to pause for a moment, thinking. When the little girl began to list the full name of the emperor with all his titles, the aristocrat, waving his hand, could not contain his surprise at how she could remember so many details that adults would not even bother to remember. The thing was that the girl read a lot about the empire and carefully studied various aspects of history and government, immersing herself in the fascinating stories described in the books. Walking down the corridor of the castle, she couldn't help but notice that this part hadn't been cleaned for a long time. Dust had settled on the floor, and cobwebs hung in the corners, giving the room an abandoned and forgotten look. Time had stopped here, and life had left these walls. Stopping near the large doors, Evan winked at the girl, and waving his hand, invited her to admire the beautiful view. What exactly he did not say, preferring to keep it a secret. Receiving no response from the girl, the man sighed with slight disappointment and said that they should have gone inside then, reminding them of the importance of what was to come and that there were matters awaiting them beyond the doors that required their attention. The door began to open, and a bright light poured out from behind it, filling the corridor with warmth and illuminating the faces of everyone present, as if inviting them to enter a new world full of possibilities and unexpected discoveries. Suddenly, a cold aura enveloped the girl, and a shiver ran through her body, making her wary, as if something invisible and mysterious was waiting inside, causing a feeling of anxiety and anticipation at the same time. Her legs became heavy, and the girl felt fear grip her, as if the weight of an indefinite burden was pressing on her fragile shoulders, causing an unpleasant premonition. Something evil was preparing to happen in this world where she was about to find herself. There was something terrible behind the door that opened. Darkness filled the room, and a cold wind seemed to carry the whispers of forgotten souls, creating an atmosphere of tension and fear. Claire was afraid of what would happen to her mother when she herself was in chains, just as their father had been. Her imagination painted dark pictures, full of fear and hopelessness, which did not let go voluntarily. The sorceress lowered her head as she stood next to the ruler, and a shadow of sadness and worry enveloped her face. She felt the weight of decisions and upcoming events that could change the fates of many. When the door finally opened, the ruler stepped into the room first, his fine gait and proud posture commanding respect. There was not an ounce of uncertainty about him. The room turned out to be empty and abandoned. There was a layer of dust on the floor, and the walls were covered with cobwebs, as if no one had been there for a long time. There was nothing there, not even furniture, which created a feeling of abandonment and timelessness. With a grin, Evan said that he was going to tell an interesting story, at the end of which the girl would find herself in the very middle of this mysterious building, immersing her in an atmosphere of adventure and unexpected discoveries. The man began to tell that a long time ago there lived a great sorceress who possessed incredible strength and wisdom, capable of controlling the elements and spells that could change the fate of entire nations. At the age of 15, she already became the owner of her own magnificent magic tower, where every corner was filled with magic and mysteries waiting to be discovered. Claire added that magic only gets stronger with age, like wine, which only gets better with time, revealing new facets, secrets, and amazing possibilities that can only be discovered with experience and wisdom. The emperor closed his eyes and continued to say that this girl was not just gifted, but truly endowed with incredible abilities that could change the fate of an entire kingdom and plunge the most powerful magicians into awe. When she reached high achievements, the teacher realized that he could no longer teach her anything, and in recognition of her incredible talent, proudly took off his cloak, handing over to her the right to be an equal among the greatest magicians. At 15, the girl decided to do something incredible, something that no one had dared to do before, and began to brew potions, creating amazing mixtures that could both heal and give unusual abilities. Surprised, the girl raised her head, and her incredibly large eyes sparkled with admiration, as if she had just discovered something incredible and magical. With a grin, the man added that this sorceress had only one flaw: a greedy father who never missed an opportunity to take advantage of women's talents and magical abilities for his own interests. Claire's mind suddenly flashed to images of her mother, whose story was eerily similar to this one, full of trials and tribulations that seemed to be passed down from generation to generation. Evan mockingly stated that any other parents would be proud of such a gifted child, but unfortunately this father seemed to hate his daughter, not wanting to acknowledge her talent and uniqueness, which was a real tragedy. Without even noticing it, the little girl confidently stepped into the room, as if she was being lured by some invisible force, and immediately found herself in a world full of mysteries and magic, which was both fascinating and terrifying. The man continued to tell how, in response to all his words, the girl hated her father, and this hatred seemed to grow deeper every day, sharpening her feelings and pushing her to decisive action. Evan added that the ruler agreed to fulfill the demand of his blood, but only if she gave up her magical power in exchange, thereby risking losing everything that made the lady herself. Claire felt sick, as if the air around her was suddenly running out, and every breath became more and more difficult, as if an invisible shadow was enveloping her, oppressing her, and making her heart beat faster with anxiety and fear. And soon the girl found herself right in front of the emperor, her fragile heart pounding with excitement, and her eyes burning with determination, because at that moment she understood that she had to take an important step that would determine her fate. The man asked the girl how much power the heiress had given to her father in order to finally emerge from his shadow, realizing that sometimes, in order to free herself from the burden of family heritage, it is necessary to make a difficult choice and give up a part of herself in exchange for freedom, after which Evan cruelly said that Carlotta had given so much power that the tyrant had ultimately destroyed the prince's mother, thus emphasizing the ruthlessness and terrible consequences of their deal, as well as the destructive influence. The little girl's eyes widened in surprise and her mouth dropped open in horror as she realized the scale of what was happening, and fear gripped her, making her heart pound in her chest as if she had witnessed something terrible and irreparable. Closing his eyes, the man understood that the princess did not know about the planned coup and revolution, and her innocence only aggravated the tragedy because she was full of hopes and dreams for the future, unaware of such horrors. Moreover, at that time she had a good relationship with the boy and her aunt, who supported the girl and protected her from difficulties, giving her confidence and warmth in those moments when the world seemed full of threats and surprises. Having learned what her father had done, Carlotta returned to the palace and angrily threw a heated scandal at him, accusing him of reckless actions that had destroyed not only her life, but also the lives of many innocent people standing in their way. At that moment she was doomed to defeat because the tyrant ruler was not only strong, but also cunning, and every word spoken could turn against her. Putting his arm around the girl's shoulders, Evan said that her mother had been imprisoned for 4 years at the time, and that the tragedy had left an indelible mark on those who knew her, as no one could forget the suffering and loneliness she had faced. And then, being proud, Carlotta did not tell anyone about her secret in the temple, only one person, and it was not her husband. The lady confided her innermost thoughts to another person. The prince's uncle was a true madman, covered in blood and filled with malice, who used his daughter, who possessed unique magic, in his insidious and cruel plans to achieve power and destruction. Suddenly the little girl felt ill and began to stagger from great stress, as if the whole world around her had lost its support, and fear gripped her body, causing deep anxiety. The man sternly ordered Claire to be patient for a little while, as the story was almost finished, and he hoped that her patience would be rewarded with the long-awaited end of this difficult test. Covering her face with her hand, she, being a goddess, felt terrible, because inside her raged anxiety and doubts that contradicted the divine nature that had been with her throughout her entire existence. Evan, with complete contempt and cruelty in his eyes, purposefully pressed on the Duke's daughter, causing her unbearable pain, enjoying other people's suffering and how she could hardly hold back her own tears. After that, standing in front of her, the guy ordered her to look up, demanding that she meet his cold gaze, full of power and inflexibility, and also expecting that the girl would realize her place in this situation. Eyes glowing purple widened in shock, reflecting genuine surprise and fear, as if not believing what was happening around them. High above them was the cursed seal, burning brightly with fire and emitting an ominous light, foreshadowing the troubles that were circulated in terrible rumors, and everyone who dared to look at it felt a chill of fear run down their skin. A tremor began to run rapidly through the little girl's body, and fear gripped her like cold chains, not allowing her to move and leaving only anxious thoughts about what might happen in the next minute. Claire realized with horror that this magic bound the deities, subjecting them to the will of the emperor, and like stupid puppets, they could not resist his sinister influence, which threatened all living things. Coldly and emotionlessly, Evan said that his uncle treated people like her cruelly, considering them merely his servants, who had to be not only controlled but also subjugated to his will, like dolls. The ruler quickly came to the conclusion, looking at the presence of this seal, that such thoughts about its meaning could not belong only to a fallen tyrant. This seal was evidence of ancient power and secret plans that left their mark on history. The man added that Carlotta also knew what effect this spell had on the gods, realizing that it robbed them of their strength and freedom, turning powerful beings into spineless bodies, completely subservient to the sinister will. Compared to his daughter, her uncle looked like a mere novice magician whose weak skills and superficial knowledge could not compare to her true strength and mastery embodied in every magical ability. Of all the saints, the former tyrant chose the Duke as his victim because he was unbearably infuriating with his arrogance and insolent behavior, which made him the ideal object for revenge and evil intent. And when the aristocrat entered the hall, something irreversible and terrible happened. The silence was broken by a loud crack, and the air was filled with ominous energy, as if the atmosphere itself foreshadowed an impending catastrophe that would turn everything upside down. Carlotta cast an evil spell on her lover, plunging him into the dark depths of fear and hopelessness, turning him into a puppet subject to someone else's will, and destroying everything that connected their hearts. Folding his arms across his chest, Evan added that the curse had caused the Duke to fall head over heels in love with the sorceress, dominating his mind and making it impossible to resist his feelings, even if they were just an illusion created by dark magic. Throwing his head back, the guy added that then the maiden used all her magic to the last drop, exhausting her powers and thus exposing herself to danger, since after that she was threatened with complete powerlessness and dependence. The little girl's mouth dropped open in surprise as the truth hit her like a cold shower, stunning her and making her realize the full depth of what was happening, causing her to feel a mixture of fear. The circle that glowed on the ceiling contained all the magic of Mother Claire, like a powerful source of power that united ancient knowledge and abilities, filling the space around with light and energy, foreshadowing inevitable changes. A book popped into my head, which contained all the basics of magic, containing ancient spells and secret knowledge that many dreamed of, but only a few could comprehend their true meaning and power. Mother was once the most powerful sorceress in the entire empire, possessing incredible strength and skill that inspired admiration and fear in all who dared to oppose her or seek her favor. Now Carlotta could content herself with only books about magic, as if she were just beginning her journey as a witch, plunging into their pages with the hope of regaining her lost powers and rediscovering the world of magic. The man coldly continued that everything ended terribly, since the tyrant was no longer interested in his daughter, and the Duke's only desire was to save his beloved, despite all the obstacles and threats that stood in the way. The circle glowed an evil purple color, and Carlotta was forced to marry the victim of her witchcraft, realizing that the magic had not only trapped him, but also brought upon them both terrible consequences from which there was no escape. The girl tried to object, saying that her mother was her father's other half, or to be more precise, his container, symbolizing the unbreakable connection and harmony that they shared, despite all the trials that befell them. The emperor shrugged his shoulders, uttered with a slight mockery, stating that at that time everyone believed in lies, and the bride herself did not want to marry a scoundrel aristocrat, realizing the vileness of his intentions and only wanting to choose her own path. Unable to bear the truth, the little girl fell to her knees, feeling her world crumble, the weight of realization squeezing her chest like an invisible hand, ready to strangle all hopes and dreams for the future. The guards burst into the room, their footsteps echoing off the walls, filling the space with tension and a sense of imminent threat, while their stern faces showed their determination to complete the task at hand at any cost. But, scolding the master, she stopped the guards, stating that the Duke wanted to help the baby, trying to protect her from impending danger and ease her suffering, even if it meant facing the anger and discontent of others. Instead, Evan picked the girl up in his arms to carry her away from all the difficulties and fears, giving her a moment of peace and safety in a world full of surprises and dangers. Claire clutched the boy's shoulders with her hands, trying to find support in this chaos, and the thought flashed through her mind that the prince had also used magic before, as if this ability could be a salvation in this critical moment. The man was impressed by the intelligence of the Duke's daughter, admiring the courage and determination that distinguished the girl from the rest, like a bright star in the night sky, capable of withstanding any difficulties and trials. As he walked forward, Claire stated that the Pope had trusted the ruler and brought their family to the palace, hoping for the safety and well-being that he thought could be guaranteed by the walls of this magnificent building, full of secrets and dangers. The girl was sure that the emperor was not a bad man because he did not bewitch her, but instead opened up to her, telling her his story as if he wanted to share something important. Carlotta trembled as she looked at her hands, realizing with painful clarity that she had no other choice, and every feminine action now carried with it inevitable consequences. Slowly, with a menacing creak, the massive door began to open, and its heavy, drawn-out sound seemed to cut through the thick silence, filling the space with a dull, alarming noise that echoed in the dark corners of the room. The nobleman began to slowly enter, his steps sounding confident, while the lady, waiting for his appearance, nervously fingered her jewelry, feeling her excitement growing with every second. Bewildered, Constantine turned to his beloved, asking what she meant and what exactly she wanted from him, inviting him to this mysterious place filled with anticipation and intrigue. Without thinking for long, Carlotta began to cast a spell over the magic ball, concentrating all her strength and attention to evoke visions in it that could reveal the secrets that tormented her so much. The man flinched, suddenly alert, as if he felt something change in the air, filling his heart with an uneasy premonition. A curse circle appeared on the floor, slowly beginning to glow with an ominous light, as if foreshadowing something terrible and destructive that was about to happen. The boy's face was distorted with deep fear and despair as chains began to appear around him, as if alive, wrapping themselves around him and tying him to a mysterious force that threatened to swallow him whole, depriving him of freedom and hope for salvation. Claire woke up from a terrible nightmare, her tender heart pounding in her chest, and her eyes, large and full of fear, wide open, as if they might pop out of their sockets trying to comprehend the reality around her. The father, all this time, sat by, sad and confused, feeling lonely and worried, while his daughter gradually awakened from her disturbing dreams, which seemed to have frightened her so much. He gently placed his child on his lap, hugging her carefully, trying to instill confidence and calm, as if wanting to protect her from all the fears that could haunt the little lady even on the darkest night. The girl was interested in the well-being of her sister and mother and looked forward to finding out how they were doing, feeling deep concern and a desire to support them during difficult times. The man answered briefly that they had been crying for a long time, exhausted by grief and suffering, and now they were sleeping without strength, as if even dreams had become a consolation for them in this difficult situation. Claire, sitting with her father, could not understand why he was not there for them at the very moment when they needed support and care, as if something important was slipping away from her perception, leaving only confusion and questions. While adjusting his daughter's hair, the Duke tenderly said that Claire was not just his beloved daughter, but a real treasure that he carefully kept and protected from all the hardships of this cruel world. The baby sighed softly, feeling the warm and reliable presence of her father, and pressed herself closer to him, thus seeking comfort and protection in the arms that gave a feeling of safety and love. Suddenly, the situation changed dramatically, and the aristocrat, with curiosity and slight concern in his voice, asked if Evan had taken her to that very mysterious room where the secrets and mysteries that were so intriguing were hidden. When asked if she had been cursed, Claire shook her head, her expression showing determination and confidence that she had managed to avoid this terrible fate. Having calmed down, Constantine began to talk about his ability as an Astarial to possess, sharing with those around him his impressive skills and the secrets that were revealed to him thanks to this unique power. The girl listened in amazement to the story of how her father could control objects, destroy them, or have power over them, realizing how unusual and impressive his abilities were, causing her heart to fill with admiration. But then, in the clearing, he destroyed the wind created by the little girl, demonstrating his power and skill, making her realize how big the difference was between their abilities and how amazingly he could control the forces of nature. And at the table, the aristocrat also used magic, gracefully manipulating objects and creating amazing illusions that captured the attention of everyone present, as if turning an ordinary dinner into a real magic show. Claire understood the taste of the cake, which sometimes disappeared, sometimes reappeared before her eyes, as if playing with her perception. And this amazing phenomenon caused her not only delight, but also slight surprise. After which, Constantine added that everything he controlled automatically became his property, as if obeying his will. This discovery filled him with pride, demonstrating the incredible possibilities of his power. As an example, a man's hand gently touched the fabric of the pillow, as if demonstrating his abilities, and at that moment, Claire felt how magic filled the atmosphere, giving this simple gesture special significance and magic. She disappeared at the command of her master, and magic spread through the air, filling the space with mysterious energies, as if reality itself was subject to the will of the Duke and took the form of his plans. The hand was empty, and the fingers were graceful, like the creation of a skilled jeweler, every detail of which emphasized sophistication and grace, and a light aura of magic hung in the air, enhancing the effect of this mysterious emptiness. The little girl stared in shock at the flames that were coming from the man's hand, her eyes filled with wonder and awe, because she couldn't believe that such magic really existed, and at that moment the world around her seemed to freeze. The pillow reappeared in her fingers, as if from nowhere, blazing with a bright fire, illuminating the space around and filling the atmosphere with a mysterious light that made the baby's heart beat faster with excitement and surprise. Her father used magic while the baby sat on his lap, his magical manipulations filling the air with sparks of light and warmth, and she watched in admiration and awe as he performed his miracles. Calmly, Constantine explained that he could know the location of everything that belonged to him, emphasizing how this ability allowed him to not only control his things, but also feel a connection to them. Hugging his daughter tightly, the man promised that he would never leave her in the hands of the young ruler again. His voice sounded confident and caring, and he sincerely hoped that he would be able to protect her from all the dangers that could come from this man. The child's little fingers gently grasped the parent's hand, creating a feeling of boundless trust, as if this simple gesture contained the strength of the connection and the confidence that they would always be together, despite any difficulties. Turning excitedly to her father, the girl assured him that no one had bewitched her, and her voice trembled with emotion, full of hope that he would dispel all fears and convince her that everything would be all right. After this, Constantine asked his daughter whether the emperor had tried to put moral pressure on her at that time, showing genuine concern for her feelings and experiences, because he wanted to make sure that she was safe and did not experience unnecessary stress. Claire responded with a denial, confidently stating that Evan, on the contrary, highly valued his friendship with the Duke, emphasizing how important this relationship was to him and how it helped strengthen their alliance during difficult times. The man's face was distorted with incomprehension. His expression became wary and anxious. The handsome man could not comprehend what exactly was happening, and this was confusing, causing a storm of doubts and questions in his soul. The ruler acted wisely in telling the girl the truth, which her parents would hardly have dared to tell her, and to support his words, he showed his seal, inspiring confidence. With a smile, Claire asked her father not to be angry with such a good friend, sincerely hoping that the words would help soften his heartfelt anger and allow him to preserve the friendship that was so important to her. The man couldn't promise her anything specific, but they could very well go visit their mother and sister, which would certainly be a pleasant event and would help strengthen family ties during this difficult time. The night sky, strewn with bright stars, illuminated the buildings with a soft light, giving them a mysterious charm and creating an atmosphere of magic in which every corner seemed full of secrets and history. Claire, sitting next to the bed where Carlotta was sleeping, carefully watched her calm breathing, filling herself with warm feelings and care, and trying to remember this moment. Esiel, with tender concern why she was still awake, sitting up in bed. Her voice trembled with anxiety, as she could not understand what could be bothering her friend and preventing her from enjoying a sweet dream. The girl could not remember when she had seen her sister so tense before. Different thoughts were rushing about, sincerely worrying about the girl and trying to understand what could cause such anxiety and worry in her soul. The sharp knife cut the carrot smoothly and effortlessly into neat pieces, its blade gliding over the bright surface of the vegetable, leaving behind even slices that quickly filled the board, filling the kitchen with the aroma of freshness. Then the little girl, full of curiosity and confusion, asked her mother why she and her sister couldn't just talk and discuss everything that was bothering them, sincerely hoping that an open conversation would help resolve their misunderstanding. Carlotta explained to her daughter that sometimes people may not understand each other, and this is completely normal since conflicts arise in life, but it is important to be able to talk and find compromises in order to better understand each other. When suddenly Esiel slipped from behind and hit her relative in the back, pushing her with unexpected force for her cruel words, which caused confusion and surprise. She was offended by her sister's harsh words about how difficult it was for them to get along, and resentment boiled in her tender heart, because she sincerely wanted to maintain peace and understanding between them, but her sister's words deeply hurt her feelings. Then, for the first time in her life, Esiel ignored Claire, leaving her confused and feeling alone. Previously, they had always found common ground and understood each other, But now there was a tension that both felt but could not overcome. Claire was then stunned, standing in complete shock with her hand raised, eyes wide with bewilderment and surprise as she could not believe that her friend could do such a thing, breaking their usual friendly bond. The little girl apologized for her behavior and promised her sister to do everything possible so that they could get along, sincerely wanting to restore their closeness and bring joy back into their relationship, because friendship was very important to her. Mother watched her daughters doing household chores with a smile, joyfully noting their efforts and cooperation, because in their truce, she saw an opportunity to strengthen their bond and create a warm atmosphere in the house filled with love. Aciel began to talk again and smile brightly after her sister's apology, her heart filled with joy, and she felt the old friendship between them being restored. The lamp burned brightly, illuminating the dark room with a soft and warm light, creating a cozy atmosphere that brought life to the space and made it more comfortable, and the shadows dancing on the walls added a touch of mystery and coziness. And here again Aciel was angry with her relative. Her face was displeased and angry, her eyes sparkled with anger, and her lips were pressed into a thin line, showing that she was not ready to give in and was willing to defend her feelings, as if preparing for a verbal battle. Soon the emperor officially pardoned his mother, restoring her good name and giving her hope for a new life full of light, joy, and serenity. Their family was classified as nobles, which provided them with a worthy place in society and opened new horizons for future generations, as well as brought respect and stability in difficult times. The days were filled with exciting etiquette lessons, with a variety of books neatly arranged on the table, offering a wealth of valuable knowledge about rules of conduct, cultural traditions, and the intricacies of communication in various social situations. Because of the varied education they received, the girls began to study separately and no longer crossed paths, which created an atmosphere of privacy and focus on personal development. Claire froze with the pen in her hand when she was called, feeling her heart beat faster from surprise, and for a moment it seemed to her that time stood still, and her thoughts were entangled in a whirlwind of emotions, creating an indescribable feeling of excitement. The maiden apologized to her teacher for her thoughtfulness, realizing that her thoughts had wandered far from the lesson, and she could not focus on the important words of the mentor who was trying to impart valuable knowledge and wisdom to her. It was Countess Dolores Rojas, an elegant and charming woman who taught various subjects to the sisters, possessed not only deep knowledge but also a beautiful appearance that always attracted the attention of the students. The child's hand began to write again, leaving bright and expressive letters on the paper, as if awakening forgotten memories of carefree days when every word seemed like a new discovery and creativity knew no bounds. The woman suggested that the student write down everything she had learned that day on paper, not only to consolidate the knowledge she had gained, but also to develop the skills of organizing thoughts and self-expression. On paper was written a fascinating story of the emperor and the first deity, intertwining myths and reality, which transported the reader to ancient times, when the world was just beginning to be filled with magic and grandeur. It was said that the Asterial could only see into the future 3 times in their entire lives, and the first of these predictions occurred while still in the womb, when the invisible threads of fate crossed, revealing key moments in their lives. The second time, when the previous god of truth passes away, the Asterial will once again have the opportunity to look into the future to understand the consequences of this momentous event and its impact on the world they live in. And the third time, on the night when death comes for him and takes him away, the gods will again look into the future to understand how this event will change their destinies and the destinies of the whole world, and how they can resist the approaching shadows. Claire wrote, she realized that power could drive many people mad, giving rise to greed and ambition that sometimes clouded their judgment and turned good people into ruthless tyrants and manipulators. The teacher was pleased with the student and happily praised her, noting her diligence, talent, and desire for knowledge, which inspired the girl to continue her studies with even greater energy and enthusiasm. The purple decoration was a gift from her father, symbolizing his love and care, and also becoming a special talisman that reminded her of the warmth of family ties and support in difficult times. The man understood that the ring was still too big for the child, and this circumstance made him smile slightly, because he knew that in the future, this decoration would become a symbol of an important event and would be carefully kept until she grew up. That's why he gave Claire a beautiful necklace, which was made of delicate beads and exquisite elements, symbolizing his care and love, and also becoming a source of joy and inspiration for her. Kneeling down in front of his daughter, Constantine helped her put on the gift, tenderly fastening the beautiful necklace on her neck and enjoying how it harmoniously complemented her image, giving her even more charm and a sincere smile. Placing her hand on her chest, the girl sighed, realizing that she was now carrying on her father's legacy. And this filled her heart with pride and a sense of responsibility, because the necklace sparkling on her neck became a symbol of family values. Dolores tried to encourage the student by telling her that she should now pay attention to fewer people in order to focus on those who really matter and not lose her individuality in the world. Constantine did not like etiquette, and therefore everyone called him aloof and cold, believing that his disregard for social norms made him inaccessible to others, although in fact he was simply looking for sincerity. The hand grabbed the cup of tea, gripping it tightly, and the hot steam rising from the drink filled the air with a cozy aroma, creating an atmosphere of warmth and calm at that moment. Afterwards, the teacher drank tea and noted that Claire could let etiquette slide, while Ciel, on the contrary, always tried to follow the rules, emphasizing that sometimes it is important to be yourself and not be afraid to show sincerity. She also said that it would be better if the lady adopted her father's manner, ignoring all other nobles, because this would allow her to remain true to her convictions and not succumb to the influence of those who strive for pretense. Claire was a special goddess and heir to her lineage, possessing unique abilities and knowledge that were passed down from generation to generation, giving her a special significance and responsibility to her people. Covering her mouth with her hand, the lady said that she did not want to hear reproaches about her professionalism, emphasizing that her efforts should be appreciated and not criticized by those who do not understand all the difficulties of the work. The girl realized that she needed to know etiquette and behave with dignity at all times, realizing that following the rules of behavior is an important part of upbringing and helps create a positive impression of oneself among others. Dolores immediately realized that the student was clearly worried about her sister, who now had to watch her behavior, and this worry was reflected in her eyes, because she realized that every action could affect the family's reputation. Ciel then looked at her with anger and frustration. Her eyes blazed with displeasure, as if the maiden could not understand why anyone should worry about her behavior, since the lady believed that she had the right to be herself. The little girl tried to justify herself, trying her best to explain her actions and experiences, but her sister remained adamant and was not going to listen to complaints. Ciel thought her sister was stupid because she was completely unaware of the danger that was hanging over them and continued to act as if everything was fine. The lack of understanding made her worry and be tormented by doubts. The little girl could not understand why her relative so willingly followed the emperor, ignoring numerous rumors about his cruelty and ruthless actions, not realizing all the danger hidden behind this decision. Claire searched for words to justify herself, but then her sister demanded to know why they were talking, not wanting to leave room for doubt and ambiguity in their conversation. To this the maiden could not give a clear answer, and again asked for forgiveness, feeling how helplessness overcame her when her sister looked at her with a demanding gaze. Ciel was literally seething with anger, and, unable to bear it any longer, ordered her sister to get out of sight, hoping that such words would make her understand the seriousness of the situation and would not interfere with her own thoughts. Out of nowhere, Dolores revealed that another student had recently persuaded Claire to go out for a cream soda, planning to have a casual time and share news despite recent tensions. That was true, but it happened in the carriage, before their arrival at the palace, before the quarrel, when they were enjoying casual conversation and laughter, completely unaware of the tension and disagreement that lay ahead. Claire coldly replied that she now had no free time, since all the duties in the palace, imposing many strict rules and restrictions on her, did not leave a minute for rest and entertainment. Dolores said that in 2 days they would have an etiquette lesson and Isiel would be free at that time, which could be a great opportunity for the girl to relax and chat with her sister without unnecessary worries. Hiding her smile behind her hand, the woman decided to give Claire the day off and give her the opportunity to talk to her sister, realizing how important it was for them to spend this time together and restore the lost closeness. The little girl's face became surprised when she heard the unexpected news, and curiosity lit up her eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she heard. The palace at night amazed with its majestic beauty when the moonlight gently enveloped its walls, creating a magical atmosphere in which every corner radiated magic and mystery, filling hearts with admiration. The girl, standing on the cold floor in her shoes, felt the cold penetrate through her shoes and thought sadly about her parents, who seemed so far away from her despite their closeness. The adults stopped what they were doing and, warily turning towards the sound, began to listen with curiosity and anxiety, trying to understand what could have attracted their attention on this quiet evening. There stood Claire, in a sleep dress with her hair down, her image as if torn from a dream. She looked both fragile and mysterious, attracting the glances of the adults who could not hide their surprise. After her pardon, the mother began to write frequent letters of apology in which she tried to express her love and regret, hoping to restore the relationship and explain everything she could not say before. At noon, Carlotta looked tired. Her eyes were darkened from lack of sleep, and a slight pallor on her cheeks indicated that the beauty probably had not had time to rest after a tense week full of worries and anxieties. Understandingly, Mother already knew about the conflict with her sister, with whom Claire would soon have to talk and discuss everything, hoping that an open conversation would help resolve the misunderstanding and restore their lost relationship. The little girl herself wanted to ask her mother's permission so that she and her sister could go to the same place, hoping that this would help improve their relationship and give them the opportunity to enjoy time together, away from worries and conflicts. The woman was not against the idea, but the final decision remained with the father, who always made important decisions in the family and, as usual, was cautious in such matters. The man was also in favor but insisted on taking knights with him for protection. Realizing that the safety of his daughters should come first, they would be able to enjoy time outside the palace walls without fearing for their safety. With a smile, the girl said that they should somehow get together and go there together, dreaming about how they would spend time in each other's company, discussing all their dreams and plans, forgetting about worries and conflict. Before letting their child go, the parents said goodbye to her, hugging her tightly to express their care and support, because every minute of separation was important for them, and they wanted her to feel loved and protected. The corridors featured long, rich blue carpets that rolled softly underfoot and gave the room an air of luxury and comfort, as if inviting each guest to take a quiet stroll through the majestic halls of the palace. The father decided to carry his daughter to bed in his arms, hugging her tenderly so that she would feel safe and comfortable, as if everything around was filled with love and care. So many people had managed to hurt our dear mother in the past, leaving deep wounds on her heart and soul, but the lady continued to move forward, hoping that time and the support of loved ones could heal. Suddenly, Constantine asked his daughter for forgiveness, admitting that he should have taken better care of her and been more attentive to her needs and feelings so that the girl always felt support and love. The little one replied that she was perfectly fine and was more interested in Isiel's condition, as she felt that her sister needed support and attention and wanted to make sure that she was okay. After which the little girl admitted that it was her sister who was avoiding her and not the other way around, and to this her father, smiling, offered to go to her together, demonstrating support and understanding because he knew how important it was for both of them to improve their relationship. Claire excitedly approached her father, asking him to ask his sister if they could go somewhere together, as she really wanted to spend time with Isiel, hoping that it would help them restore their friendship and return to their old, carefree moments. The man immediately agreed, ready to do anything for the well-being of his daughter, and his determination was so great that he was ready to overcome any obstacles. The bird, sitting on a branch, joyfully sang its melody, filling the surrounding world with gentle sounds and giving all listeners a feeling of spring awakening, and in the sun's rays the feathers shimmered with different colors. Sleepily, the little girl slowly opened her eyes, waking up and illuminating her room with the morning light that gently streamed through the window, filling her world with warmth and comfort. The girl's attention was drawn to an object lying on the table, which mysteriously glittered in the morning sun, arousing curiosity and a desire to find out what kind of thing it was, hiding in the large room. There was a letter from her father on the table, and the girl opened it with excitement and began to read. Today they were going on a walk with Esiel, which filled her heart with joy and anticipation of adventure. The driver controlled the horses with skill, holding the reins confidently in his hands, and his experienced movements allowed him to keep them at an even pace as the carriage moved smoothly along the winding road surrounded by green fields and flowering trees. In the carriage sat Claire, dressed in beautiful, elegant clothes that emphasized sophistication, and her tense face betrayed her inner experiences, reflecting the depth of thoughts and worries on this important day for her. Opposite sat Esiel, just as sweet and charming, with kind eyes that shone with tenderness when she glanced to the side, as if thinking about something pleasant or expecting an exciting conversation with Claire. There was silence between them, and only the slight noise of the carriage wheels disturbed the peace, and next to them, sitting in his place, was the butler, acting as an escort, who carefully monitored the road and the time. The man decided to break the silence and, turning to the lady, asked if she wanted to apologize to her sister, trying to lighten the mood and, perhaps, resolve a long-standing quarrel that was clearly weighing on both ladies. However, the little girl just remained silent, lowering her eyes, as if thinking about something important, and did not dare to answer, because the beauty was tormented by doubts about whether this meeting could change anything between them. Claire did not understand why her sister should apologize, because she did not see any guilt in her actions, and this misunderstanding filled her heart with conflicting feelings, causing confusion and anxiety. The servants explained to the lady that they were afraid that their presence could disrupt their relative's strict daily routine, causing inconvenience or distracting her from important matters. Esiel, lowering her thoughtful gaze, understood perfectly well that her sister was ready to sacrifice everything, her dreams, desires, and safety, to protect her from any difficulties and support her in any situation. For Claire to realize that her friend had noticed this, because she never thought that anyone would be able to notice her inner experiences and secret doubts. In response, the lady explained that she simply wanted to keep her promise to her sister, to always be there and support her loved one, despite any difficulties and circumstances that might arise along the way. The butler, with a friendly smile on his face, cautiously turned to his lady, inquiring whether she had recently heard the words of another lady that could have a significant impact on their current affairs and the situation in the house. Esiel sat there, all red with embarrassment, feeling the warmth flooding her cheeks, and with difficulty finding the words to answer the question asked, which unexpectedly put her in an awkward position, causing confusion in her. Claire, with a soft smile on her face, extended her hand towards Esiel, asking for them to make peace and leave all the misunderstandings behind, hoping to restore their friendship and bring back the old trust between them. The little sister, not holding back her feelings, rushed to hug her friend, considering her the closest person, and tried to convey to her all the warmth and support that she so strongly wanted to express at this touching moment. The girl couldn't answer this, only gently touching Esiel's back with her small hands, feeling how the warmth and support of her friend filled her tender heart with peace and joy. The butler was happy for them, seeing their friendship, but asked them to be careful in the carriage, which was traveling through narrow streets, to avoid any surprises and keep the passengers safe during the trip. Soon they arrived at the desired place, and the coachman, keeping an eye on the road, stopped the carriage, allowing all the passengers to get out and enjoy the fresh air, which filled them with anticipation of new impressions. The two little girls got out of the carriage and stepped with delight onto the stone road leading to the city, feeling the coolness of the stones under their feet and anticipating all the amazing adventures that awaited them ahead. With a joyful exclamation, Esiel pointed her finger at one of the buildings, attracting her sister's attention, and doing so with such enthusiasm that her large eyes sparkled with delight as the maiden waited for her to appreciate the beauty of the architecture of the place. Claire looked at the popular place with an emotionless gaze. All thoughts were far from the surrounding fun, and the sorceress was immersed in her own thoughts about life and its turns. The one who told her about this place was the son of a rich merchant and an unremarkable young man whose ordinary manners and modest appearance concealed his true origin and wealth. However, in the past, he had not hesitated to loudly swear at Claire, insulting her and calling her dirty names, which left a deep mark in her memory and made her perception of his current behavior even more complex and contradictory. The butler noticed that there was a room for the nobility upstairs, and standing next to the young noblewoman, he could not help but notice the luxurious details of the interior, which emphasized the status and importance of the surroundings. Looking at the joyful and embarrassed Esiel, Claire could not take her eyes off her, feeling her heart fill with warmth and tenderness, because at that moment her sister looked especially beautiful and happy. She took a determined step forward, hoping that no more drama would happen that day and that everything would finally fall into place, allowing her to enjoy moments of peace and joy. The building featured a prominent sign for a pastry shop, decorated with exquisite patterns and mouth-watering images of sweets, attracting the attention of passers-by and enticing them to look inside to enjoy the delicious treats. On the table, covered with a snow-white tablecloth, there were various desserts, ranging from delicate pastries to chocolate cakes, each of which beckoned with its aroma and splendor, creating an atmosphere of a real sweet paradise. The happy girl held a glass of blue drink in her hands, amazed by its unusual taste and bright color, which seemed to personify summer fun, filling the body with joy and lightness. The three of them comfortably settled down at one table inside, enjoying the warmth of the atmosphere and communicating with each other, creating an atmosphere of friendship and mutual understanding that allowed them to forget about all their worries and simply enjoy the moment. Using magic, Claire caused the tube to rise into the air and float smoothly towards her, creating the impression that she was being controlled by an invisible force, adding a touch of mystery and surprise to her magical play. The servants could not take their surprised gaze away from the magic that was unfolding before them, like bright fireworks, filling the atmosphere with magic and miracles and leaving unforgettable memories of what was happening around. Together, they discussed how much the baby's gait was reminiscent of her father's strength, and marveled at how those traits were passed down through generations, a living embodiment of the legacy that bound their hearts and stories. Covered in cream, Esiel winked happily, oblivious to the fact that her hands and face were covered in the sweet white mixture, laughing at how this funny fact only added to the fun of the party. The joyful girl raised her hand with a gift from her father, a beautiful pendant, sparkling in the light like a little star, fulfilling lovely dreams and reminding of the love and care of her noble father. Clutching the pendant tightly in her hand, Claire realized that she wasn't the only one whose parents had given her gifts like this. Her body filled with warmth at the thought of how nice it would be to do something special for her sister. The little girl hid the decoration under her dress, trying to hide it from prying eyes, and thought tenderly about how her relative would never lose this precious treasure. Esiel pouted angrily and began to scold her sister, who was constantly getting lost in the crowd and wandering off to unknown places with strangers, completely unaware of how dangerous this could be for her. Claire realized that she had no choice but to ask for forgiveness and suggest that her sister go out together from time to time so that they could support each other and spend more time together. The girl did not hold a grudge against her sister and, with a smile on her face, happily hugged her, realizing that their connection was more important than any quarrels and that love would always be stronger than misunderstanding, because it was moments like these that made their relationship stronger. The butler smiled and said that he had served their father since he was a child, and his eyes lit up with memories of the years gone by, watching the family grow and change over time. The girls laughed, trying to imagine what their father was like as a child, imagining him as a funny and mischievous boy who probably played pranks and dreamed of great adventures, just like they were doing now. The man admitted that, at that time, their parent was not very sociable and did not try to make friends with other children, preferring to spend time alone with his thoughts and dreams, which made him even more mysterious and interesting. Claire responded by saying that in this way she was very different from her father, as she had a mother and sister who always supported her and inspired her to communicate with others. The servants watched as the Duke's daughters interacted sweetly with each other, their joyful laughter and bright looks creating an atmosphere of warmth and comfort that filled the entire hall. Suddenly, as if by invisible magic, the stem of the flower rose smoothly and gracefully from the vase, causing everyone present to hold their breath in surprise and admiration. Then the lady, noticing the flower on her dress, began to play with it using her wind magic, and the petals, as if alive, swirled in the air, creating an amazing dance around her. Being self-taught, Claire stared out the window, lost in her thoughts. She should socialize more with other people to broaden her horizons and find new friends who could inspire her to new discoveries. It happened in the past when they lived in their cozy little wooden house, lost among the forest trees, surrounded by greenery and fragrant flowers. All the nannies that Mother hired pointed at Claire and whispered to each other that she was strange, causing the girl to feel isolated and misunderstood. Her uniqueness became the subject of discussion and gossip. The little girl curiously asked her mother where the nearest temple was, where people with talents and magic were sent, because she had heard that it was not the best place for those who were different from others. However, Carlotta sternly stated that as long as she was alive, her daughter would not go there, resolutely protecting her from any dangers and warning that such a place could threaten their peace and happiness. The woman gently asked that next time the girl try to pretend that nothing had happened, so as not to draw unnecessary attention to her magic and to remain calm. And then they moved often, packing their bags again and again, like nomads accustomed to constant change, each time leaving behind a piece of the past and heading off to meet a new, unknown future. One day they moved to a small village where there were many cozy houses and children playing in the sunny streets. The quiet atmosphere of this place immediately filled their hearts with a feeling of peace. Esiel quickly settled into her new surroundings and made many new friends, instantly charming everyone with her kindness and outgoing personality. She quickly integrated into local life, and soon her friendships with other children became strong. Claire, on the contrary, stood aside, unable to bring herself to speak to anyone. Embarrassment and shyness prevented her from joining the cheerful company of children, and the maiden only watched from the sidelines, feeling lonely in this new place. In the village there stood a huge summer house, surrounded by lush gardens and tall trees. The house immediately attracted the attention of everyone who passed by, concealing the mysteries of the past and promising new stories. The family that lived in this house sometimes came for the summer to relax in the peace and quiet of the village. They had a boy who always traveled with them, who was impudent and not the nicest person. Mother extended an invitation to her daughters to come into the large summer house, smilingly inviting them to stay and look at the spacious rooms and the beautiful views that were hidden inside. The first month went well, and the little girl happily interacted with her new friends, filling the village with laughter and fun, while Claire remained on the sidelines, silently watching them with a slight feeling of sadness. Soon the little lady was left all alone, while the other children were happily playing together, and as she watched them play from the edge of the playground, she felt mixed emotions of longing and wishing she could join them. Asiel happily invited her sister to join them, with the sincere hope that her invitation would help Claire overcome her shyness and enter the circle of friendship that was so inviting with its warmth and fun. But the sorceress refused, not turning to face her relative, as if she was afraid to reveal her true feelings and show how much she missed the communication and friendship that she so desperately desired. Instead, the girl sat down in a quiet corner and began to read, immersing herself in a world of books where she could find solace and forget about her loneliness, allowing herself to enjoy the adventures and fantasies that unfolded before her eyes. As Asiel joyfully jumped around with a wreath on her head, interacting with the other little girls, laughter and fun filled the air, creating an atmosphere of happiness and friendship in which each girl felt like a part of something magical. But one day, an important event occurred. A boy from the family that owned the summer house arrived. His appearance caused a wave of curiosity and anticipation among the children because he was their new acquaintance. The servants quickly noticed the arrival of the young master and greeted him with sincere respect, noting his confidence and charisma, which immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Nathan, that was the boy's name, suddenly broke into the witch's fragile peace, and although his appearance was not particularly attractive, there was a spark of curiosity and courage in his eyes that could challenge any preconceived judgments. The rose slipped easily from his hands and fell to the floor. The petals flew in different directions, as if dancing in the air, and the soft sound of its landing broke the silence of the room, leaving behind a scent that reminded of tenderness. Claire sank into dark memories, looking at her hands, and thoughts of the boy from the summer house caused a heavy melancholy in her, filling her heart with remorse and hostility. As soon as her thoughts cleared up, her dear sister suddenly cried out that they could go to the bookstore, where many wonderful stories and adventures awaited. The little girl waited impatiently for an answer, carefully examining Claire. Her eyes showed hope that she would give consent, and this moment seemed incredibly important to her, full of anticipation. The sorceress could not resist the call of fate, and, feeling that the time had come to act, she merely nodded to the butler, expressing her consent and readiness to accept the challenge. The man needed time to prepare everything thoroughly, so he politely asked the lady to sit and wait for him here, promising to return as soon as possible. The ladies were left alone in a deep silence that enveloped them like a soft blanket, filling the space around them with a feeling of peace and anticipation, while every rustle and sound seemed louder in this sudden silence.